Chapter 1519. Let her go. A feminine voice was heard. Han Tianyong saw a young female cultivator shoot over like an arrow and stand in front of Bai Wuxia. When he saw Long Xingnan's smile, Han Tianyong could not help but reveal a greedy look. He grinned and said, "This girl is a peerless beauty. How dare a mere foundation establishment ant provoke me? Today I'm going to enjoy you and Bai Wuxia together. One dragon and two phoenixes." Long Xingnan had also learned a divine power to suppress her cultivation level from Jiang Tian. She had yet to release her aura or reveal her cultivation level. Han Tianyong only thought of her as a foundation establishment cultivator and did not think much of her. He thought that she was a piece of juicy meat that had been delivered to his mouth. There was no reason for him not to eat it. "Fellow Daoist, I'm very grateful for your help." Bai Wuxia bowed and said anxiously and earnestly, "However, they have many enemies. But they have the advantage in numbers and they have as many experts as there are clouds in the sky. You and I are definitely no match for them. My lowly life is not worth you risking your life for. If you insist on being stubborn, then we will both die together. Please leave quickly. You are the only one." Her eyes were slightly red as she bit her lower lip with her snow-white teeth and said with tears in her eyes, "You must spread the truth about Kong Teichu and the ruins of immortality so that the world can distinguish between friend and foe. Even if I die, I can rest in peace." "Don't worry. You won't die. Today there are important figures present. Even if the ruins Emperor's palace comes personally, he won't be able to hurt you at all." Long Xingnan consoled gently. "What important figures?" Bai Wuxia was slightly taken aback. Long Xingnan did not answer and said softly, "I'm going to start a massacre. Protect yourself. Fight if you can. If you can't, retreat into the flower boat. Do you understand?" "I understand. I won't be a burden to you." Bai Wuxia nodded. "One dragon and two phoenixes. Do you know how many dragons I've killed in my life?" Long Xingnan looked at Han Tianyong as a cold glint flashed in her clear eyes. Her lips curled into a mocking smile. Suddenly she extended her right hand and unleashed a divine power. Dragon capturing hand. Boom. With a loud sound, Yuan Qi erupted and transformed into a huge millstone-like hand that grabbed at Han Tianyong, who was 1,000 feet away. "What?" Han Tianyong turned pale with fright. He seemed to have heard a rumbling sound coming from Long Xingnan's dantian. It seemed like her Jindan was trembling. Could it be that this bitch was hiding her cultivation level? Moon-swallowing heavenly wolf. Break. In a moment of desperation, Han Tianyong did not dare to be careless. He unleashed all of his strength and ignited his golden core. The ash-green true essence surged out of his dantian, and instantly formed the shadow of a vicious wolf. It opened its bloody mouth and howled towards the sky. It seemed as if it wanted to swallow the moon and swallow the stars. Then it charged towards the dragon-capturing hand. But everything was useless. Although the 9 Dragons Emperor technique that Long Xingnan cultivated was incomplete and was not completely compatible with the laws of heaven and earth, it was still a technique that had been passed down since ancient times. It was very powerful. After all, she was only in the nascent soul realm and couldn't mobilize the laws. What they were competing in was the density and degree of condensation of their true essence. After following Jiang Tian for the past few days, she had deeply understood the true meaning of the laws and constantly perfected it. This cultivation technique had been upgraded to a real immortal cultivation technique. It was flawless, and when she used it, its power would increase by 10 times. Han Tianyong was only at the first or second level of the Golden Core realm. His true essence wasn't dense enough, and he belonged to the Demon Cultivator clan. He was using his weakness to attack Long Xingnan's strength. How could he resist? Under the dragon-capturing hand, his vicious wolf Dharma form was like a piece of paper being crushed by a 1,000-kilogram boulder. It instantly exploded and didn't even last for a second. It turned into turbulent true essence and shot in all directions. In the next moment, the dragon-capturing hand grabbed down like an eagle grabbing a chick, and it grabbed Han Tianyong's tall and robust body in its hand. No matter how Han Tianyong struggled and released boundless divine abilities, he was unable to break free at all. "Fellow cultivator, please spare my life." Han Tianyong was terrified and begged for mercy loudly. "It's too late." Long Xingnan did not say another word. With a burst of her power, Han Tianyong was crushed like a ripe tomato. His blood dyed the sky red. Even his Jindan's spirit was crushed, but it did not break the dragon-catching hands. Evil woman, who are you? How dare you kill the Zhongzi of the Sky Wolf sect? A white-haired mid-stage golden core old man stepped out. He was furious and his blood was boiling. His face was ferocious and he let out a howl like a wolf. The old man's hair was messy like grass. His face was old and his body was thin. His ribs were like blades under his animal skin clothes, but his eyes were fierce like a sick tiger and old wolf, full of savagery and bloodthirstiness. This person was one of the grand elders of the Heavenly Wolf sect. He was very powerful and had once swept through a large area of this world. He was very famous. Kill her. Avenge the Zhongzi. Put her to death. Eat her meat in hot pot. No, eat it raw. It tastes better raw. Grind her bones and scatter her ashes. Extract her divine soul and burn it in fire for 100 years. Let her taste endless pain. Many disciples of the Sky Wolf sect were furious when they saw this. They beat their chests and stomped their feet, roaring loudly with a murderous aura. They were an extremely brutal sect. They all had the bloodline of evil wolves and were arrogant by nature. They were cruel and bloodthirsty and would easily wipe out entire sections. With their violent strength and bloodshed, they dominated this world and no one dared to provoke them. How could they bear to see their Zhongzi killed today? They wanted nothing more than to crush Long Xingnan to vent their anger. You don't deserve to know my name. Long Xingnan was contemptuous and sneered. Today all of you will die here. No one can escape. Bitch, you are so arrogant. Ling Yuxiu, the palace lord of the Holy Light Palace, stepped forward and sneered. We have dozens of golden core cultivators here. We even have crystal warships and small god-destroying light cannons. Do you think you are a match for us? You are just an ant. Wu Fengqing sneered. Do you know that we are acting under the orders of the Ruins Emperor's palace? By challenging us, you are challenging the Supreme Ruins Emperor's palace. Haha, golden core cultivators. I don't know how many I have killed. Long Xingnan laughed loudly, almost to the point of tears. She was domineering and murderous, but there was also a hint of sadness. Suddenly, her smile faded and she was shrouded in frost. Her beautiful eyes flashed with a cold glint as murderous intent overflowed. You are the lackeys of the Ruins Emperor's palace. Do you think I am afraid of you? Today, even if the princes and grandsons of the Ruins Emperor's palace come, I will kill them all. Ever since she learned that the dragon sect had been destroyed and her father, Long Baxia, killed, Long Xingnan was filled with hatred. She wanted nothing more than to step into the Ruins Emperor's palace and fight them to the death. However, Jiang Tian wanted to use battle to fuel battle and find resources to raise his cultivation. He wanted to finish the battle in one fell swoop, so he did not go up to the upper domain to fight. This made Long Xingnan extremely frustrated. Kill. Long Xingnan shouted softly. Her body flashed and like a dragon's arc she flew towards Wu Fengqing. Before she arrived she had already struck out with her palm. Tempest of the 9 Dragons. The palm contained 9 types of strength. The first layer of strength in her palm erupted like a furious dragon. Block it. Alarm bells rang in his head as Wu Fengqing roared. He crushed 5 or 6 protective Dharma artifacts and went all out. Streaks of colorful light barriers blossomed in unison. Some were like blooming lotuses, some were like golden shields, some were like dancing phoenixes, some were like white pythons coiling around a mountain. Layer after layer, they instantly formed a solid barrier around his body. They were in a stalemate with the first layer of Tempest of the 9 Dragons for an entire second. You think you have what it takes? Long Xingnan chuckled in a mocking manner. Her hair fluttered behind her like a flag as she moved her shoulders and hips. She pushed out with her palm again as Dharma energy flowed through her body. She gathered all the Dharma energy in her palm and unleashed the second layer of strength. Bang! All of Wu Fengqing's protective Dharma artifacts exploded in an instant. The barriers and light barriers shattered and dissipated. Wu Fengqing was sent flying for over 3,000 meters away. His head bumped into a warship and the crystal wall behind his head cracked. The rolling Dharma energy coiled around his body like a dragon. It wriggled and triggered the third layer of strength of the Tempest of the 9 Dragons. The crystal wall of the warship began to shatter. The Dharma energy in Long Xingnan's body surged violently as the fourth layer of strength erupted. Half of Wu Fengqing's head was already embedded in the crystal wall. The fifth layer of strength of the Tempest of the 9 Dragons erupted. A dull vibration came from the hull as Wu Fengqing's entire head sank into the hull. The sixth layer of strength of the Tempest of the Nine Dragons erupted like the impact of 6 dragons. With a boom, Wu Fengqing's entire head and body shattered like a smashed fly. Blood, organs, broken bones, and minced flesh covered a large area of the hull. Boom! The mountain-like warship was pushed back several hundred meters by her. It shook violently and the internal reactor gasped for air. Black smoke billowed out as if it was crying out in pain. It was shocking to the extreme. She killed a golden core cultivator with one palm. Moreover, Wu Fengqing was a mid-stage golden core cultivator. As an itinerant cultivator, he had visited many experts in various sects and cultivated a variety of divine powers and arcane arts. Yet he was still no match for one palm. The Nine Dragons' Emperor art is fierce and domineering with many changes. It's indeed extraordinary today. Ghost Wolf stood behind Jiang Tian and exclaimed. She's also an immortal. Too powerful. As for Fatty Yen and his sister, they were dumbfounded. They felt dizzy and their hearts were about to jump out of their throats. She's very young. However, let her fight for a while longer. Firstly, she can vent her anger. Secondly, she can train herself. Jiang Tian yawned and said casually. Fatty Yen and his sister were even more dumbfounded after hearing that. They stared at Jiang Tian in disbelief. That evil woman is so powerful. Fellow Daoists, be careful. This time even Ling Wuxia was shocked and instinctively took a few steps back. On the battlefield, many golden core perfected cultivators looked at each other and saw the fear and panic in each other's eyes. You're scared just like that? I haven't even used my full strength yet. Long Xingnan retracted her right hand slowly and clenched it into a fist behind her back. Her curvaceous figure stood straight like a sword and she was valiant. Her aura was extremely cold as she mocked. You guys are truly born in the year of the dog. At the end of the day, you're just lackeys and not dragons or tigers. How cowardly. Palatial Lord Ling, what should we do? A golden core perfected cultivator had a panicked expression and was unwilling to fight to the death with Long Xingnan. The other party was very strong. Even if they managed to kill her, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. Who knew if they would die in her hands? Fellow Daoists, what else can we do? Do we have a choice? Ling Wuxia's gentleness had long disappeared and was replaced by endless malice. She gritted her teeth and said coldly, it was Bai Mushua's order to capture Murong Mushua. Capturing Bai Mushue is an order from the Ruins Emperor's palace. We have a military order, so we can't do it. Both of us have to die. Chapter 1520. Let's attack together. I don't believe that we can't take care of her today if we join forces. The Grand Elder of Heavenly Wolf sect roared furiously. His Dharma idol exploded and turned into a three-eyed white wolf. Red light shot out from its 3 blood-red eyes and it was extremely ferocious as it charged forward. Go! Ling Wuxia waved her slender right hand and a folding fan flew out. With a wave, it expanded and covered Long Xingnan. The folding fan opened in the air and the picture of mountains, rivers and moons on the surface of the fan shone with thousands of rays of light and turned solid. Instantly, mountains crashed and rivers flowed. There was even a crescent moon that cut towards Long Xingnan like a strange knife. The folding fan was also a quasi-true weapon. One of the founding masters of Holy Light Palace had spent 100 years of hard work to absorb the earth chi of mountains, water of rivers and the essence of moonlight into it and condense it into a Dharma treasure. Kill. Countless Foundation establishment cultivators and dozens of golden core perfected lords roared together. They either pierced through the air with their flying swords, released their Dharma idols or engaged in close combat, attacking Long Xingnan crazily. For a moment, Long Xingnan seemed to be in a desperate situation. Everyone on the boat was shocked when they saw that. In this world, golden core cultivators were the top existences. Even if those old fellows who lived in seclusion were included, there were only a few hundred of them. This time, dozens of them were mobilized and they attacked together without caring about their identities. In their eyes, it was a peerless killing situation and none of them could remain calm. An old cultivator kindly sent a voice transmission to Jiang Tian with his spirit consciousness. Fellow Daoist, your companion is in danger. He might not be able to handle dozens of golden core perfected lords. If you guys have the strength, let's attack together. Even Ghost Wolf was a little worried. Master, why don't I go and help her? I'm afraid she might be injured. It's fine. Zhang Tian sipped the jade flame wine and praised it in his heart. He smiled faintly. Only extreme killing can stimulate one's potential, refine one's cultivation and sharpen one's Dao heart. I've taught her many dermic formulations and I'm looking forward to her reaching the nascent soul realm after this battle. What training! She's clearly heartless and doesn't care about the life and death of her friends. This kid definitely doesn't have a cultivation base. Yanli shot a glance at Zhang Tian. Her heart was in her heart, but she didn't dare to say it out loud. After all, she still couldn't figure out Zhang Tian's background. Yes. Ghost Wolf bowed and nodded, then turned to look at the battlefield. Thank you all for sending me your dog heads. He saw. Long Xingnan shouted. The vital essence around her body surged and blew her hair back like a waterfall. It turned into a dragon-shaped curve and charged towards them, straight for the cultured scum Ling Yuxiu. The 9 Dragons Monarch technique was the main divine ability. Once the divine ability was unleashed, 9 dragons would appear. It was as if 9 true dragons were surging and it was extremely powerful. The 9 dragons had many transformations. They had all sorts of offensive spells and defensive spells. They controlled fire and water, evolved yin and yang, and their offensive power was extremely strong and ferocious. It could be fierce and domineering, but it could also be flexible. Regardless of whether it was attacking, defending, or refining, it could be done as he pleased. Moreover, these 9 dragons had been cultivated by him to the point where they were almost material. They were extremely condensed and powerful. Clang! She punched out, and a huge dragon that was 100 feet long rushed out, instantly piercing through a mountain peak that was manifested in Yuxiu's folding fan. Essence chi gushed out in all directions, and then the runes on the mountain peak shattered. Immediately after, the mountain peak also exploded. With a wave of her hand, a green dragon that was good at absorbing water rushed out. It opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the long river without leaving a single drop behind. Long Xingnan directly threw out a punch at the crescent moon that was flying toward her. She shattered the crescent moon and turned it into surging moon essence that filled the air. In the blink of an eye, the magic power of Ling Yuxiu's folding fan was completely destroyed. Ling Yuxiu's face was pale as he retreated in panic. However, Long Xingnan was even faster. She had already rushed to 100 meters away and grabbed at him. It was the dragon-catching hand again. As Ling Yuxiu screamed in panic, she grabbed him and held his throat in front of her. The attack stopped temporarily. Everyone was afraid that they would be implicated and hurt Ling Yuxiu. Everyone trembled as they looked at this scene in shock. In just 3 flicks of the fingers, Ling Yuxiu was captured alive. Fellow Daoist, I know my mistake. As long as you don't kill me, I'll be your most loyal servant in the future. Ling Yuxiu was completely restrained by her vast and heavy quintessential essence. It was as though he was trapped in a metal plate and could not move at all. He could not help but break out in cold sweat as he pleaded pitifully. Ha! Long Xingnan sneered without saying a word. Her slender hand reached out like a dragon's claw. Her fingers that were like steel hooks instantly pierced through his dantian and pulled out his blood-stained golden core before crushing it. A golden core cultivator's physical body was powerful and their vitality was vigorous. Even if they lost their golden core, they would not die immediately. Ling Yuxiu could not help but be in so much pain that he wished he was dead. He glared at Long Xingnan in shock and anger as he shouted hysterically. How can you be so cruel and heartless? You will definitely be punished by the heavens in the future. You will definitely die a horrible death. The ones who are cruel and heartless are the Ruin's Emperor and his lackeys. Smack! Long Xingnan sneered. With a slap of her hand, she slammed his head into his abdomen and threw it away like trash. Kill her. Avenge Palatial Lord. What a vicious woman. I'll tear you to pieces and grind your bones to dust. How dare you kill my husband? I'll fight you to the death. The disciples of Mythical Palace were all beautiful female cultivators. When they saw this, they cried out and charged forward like moths to a flame. The rules of Mythical Palace were just that strange. Female cultivators were the main force, but every palatial lord had to be a male cultivator. When a palatial lord was born, all his senior and junior brothers of the same generation would be expelled from the sect. As for these female disciples, they would become his Dao companions and enjoy the bliss of having multiple partners. Hundreds of years later, a new batch of male disciples would be recruited until a new palatial lord was born. The cycle repeated itself. There was a saying that mythical palace's palatial lord was overjoyed and wouldn't change even if offered the position of immortal. It was widely spread in the world and everyone was envious of him. As the palatial lord was the only male cultivator in the sect, the female disciples were madly in love with Wuxia. Now that they saw their palatial lord being killed, their eyes turned red as blood flowed. Their bodies trembled and they nearly fainted. They roared hysterically and charged at Xian. "You're just like ants." Xian's body was wrapped in the auspicious aura of the 9 dragons. She stepped on the light and charged through the female cultivators. The power of each of her attacks was unimaginable. They could split mountains and seas and reverse the universe. Most of the female cultivators of Mythical Palace were in the foundation establishment stage. 1 or 2 golden core stage cultivators were only in the early stage. How could they withstand her attacks? Under Xian's bombardment, they were like flowers of blood blooming in the air. Like patches of mournful red clouds, the falling corpses dyed the lake red. Xian's technique was majestic and did not lose out to men. At the same time it was changeable. Her every move contained the power of heaven and earth. Her movements were bold and powerful. In the blink of an eye, she charged through the female cultivators of Mythical Palace. Her body was covered in blood and her expression was stern. Behind her was an empty night sky. All the female cultivators were dead. Not a single one was left alive. In the next moment, her figure swayed and she rode on clouds. She was like a flying dragon in the sky, heading straight for the Heavenly Wolf Sect's Grand Sect Master. The 9 Dragons Emperor technique is rooted in the Ao Emperor. He was a peerless dragon demon and created this technique with the characteristics of the dragon race. Dragons can be big or small, invisible or visible. They can soar into the sky, swim in the deep sea, hide in the abyss and see in the fields. They can summon clouds and rain, burn the sky with fire, control wind and thunder and summon dew. They have many divine powers. This technique is, of course, extraordinary. Tonight it belongs to Xian and the 9 Dragons Emperor technique. Jiang Tian also revealed a look of praise as he leisurely spoke of a secret. That was the information he had obtained when he was discussing ancient history with the Golden Crow Ancient Emperor in the Tang Valley of the Ancient Demon Abyss. "I see." Ghost Wolf nodded and sighed. "I've seen the ancient techniques of the deity ground. They're not inferior to the techniques of the Ruins Emperor. As long as they're improved, they'll be compatible with the laws of this world." In the next moment, Jiang Tian suddenly looked into the distance. His deep eyes seemed to penetrate the endless clouds and forests. His expression changed slightly and he chuckled. "This is fun. A few giants are here. Let's see if Xian can kill all these bastards before they arrive. Otherwise I'll have to do it myself." Chapter 1521. At that moment, Xian had almost lost her mind as she fought against a few golden core powerhouses of Heavenly Wolf Sect. Her spells and even her corporeal body divine arts could all be unleashed on him. The power of each strike was like moving mountains and overturning seas. She pointed with her finger and a dragon's might that contained immense true essence pierced through the head of a golden core perfected lord, shattering his divine soul. His golden core was extinguished instantly and could not be activated at all. His corpse fell into the water. Bang! She punched out and dragons suddenly appeared in the air. 9 dragons extended their claws and tore a dozen golden core perfected lords to pieces. With a sweep of her leg, it was like a dragon swinging its tail. Surging dragon-shaped quintessence swept through a large area. Over 100 Skywolf sect disciples exploded like strings of firecrackers, turning into a bloody mist that filled the air. "That woman is so fierce." Countless cultivators screamed as their eyes were filled with fear. They did not dare to go forward and tried to put on a brave front. It was a cruel and bloody battle. Since the beginning of the battle, Xian had been pushing forward violently. Experts fell like rain and blood dyed the sky red. Countless corpses and broken limbs floated above Fallen Leaf Lake like dead fish. The smell of blood soared into the sky and was extremely pungent. They wanted to retreat. If they fought Xian again, they would die without a doubt. If they retreated, the Ruins Emperor's palace would pursue them. However, the terrain of Penglai was complicated with deep ravines and crisscrossing mountain ranges. If they found a place to hide their auras and went into seclusion, they might have a chance of survival. Heavenly Wolf Sect. Even if the sect is destroyed, we must kill that woman and avenge Xianxia. The Grand Elder of Heavenly Wolf Sect had also been severely injured in the previous battle. He was already covered in blood and his bones were broken in several places. The white-furred three-eyed wolf Dharma idol was also on the verge of dissipating. However, his face was still as cold as steel. His cold eyes were filled with killing intent as his body surged with an unyielding fighting spirit. He was a ruthless person who had been famous for hundreds of years. He was once an invincible bandit who killed and pillaged everywhere. His hands were stained with blood and he had killed countless people. He was an ambitious person who climbed to a high position by stepping on the bones of his enemies. His heart was as hard as steel. Hold on. Get on the ship. I'll kill her. At this moment, a divine general in black iron armor walked out of the crystal warship and said softly, "Let's go. This is Long Xingnan, a disciple of the Heaven Sect's Dragon Gate of the Sea Wave world. She once cultivated in the 100 Moons Academy. How could you be a match for her?" This divine general was tall and majestic. His armor was made of platinum and pure gold, and he held a tiger-headed saber in his hand. His aura was extraordinary and his tiger eyes were awe-inspiring. Anyone who looked at him would feel a sense of fear. So he's Long Xingnan. Many cultivators were so scared that their faces turned pale. The Heavenly Wolf Sect's Supreme Elder's heart trembled. He thought to himself, no wonder this woman is so powerful. She is the nemesis of all demonic cultivators. He raised his right hand. After the disciples retreated to the crystal ships, he also jumped onto a ship and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Whoa, so she was Fairy Long Xingnan. No wonder he's so powerful. However, she should be following the Ruins Emperor closely. Why would she risk her life to protect Bai Muxue who had slandered the Ruins Emperor? Cries of surprise could be heard on the boat. Many cultivators were shocked and could no longer remain calm. This world used to be the territory of the Dragon Gate. When Long Xingnan arrived, she was like a princess on an inspection tour. Even a top sect like the Heaven Baron sect had to bow their heads and welcome her, not daring to slight her. After all, they were Foundation Establishment and Golden Core cultivators who had yet to leave this world. They were not aware of the inside stories and great changes in other worlds. Their news was still from a long time ago. Heavens, I'm sitting with Fairy Xingnan. Fatty Yen was even more excited. The fat all over his body trembled. Don't say anything. That divine general seems to be even more powerful. After killing Long Xingnan, he might kill us too. Yanli was so scared that her face turned ashen as she trembled. One of the 9 divine generals of the White Tiger Guards, Feng Hu, half-step soul formation realm. Ghost Wolf looked at the back of the divine general with a solemn expression. He did not expect him to come personally. He said in a low voice, "Senior Grand Primordium, I'm afraid Long Xingnan is in danger." "It's fine." Jiang Tian was calm. He waved his folding fan and said leisurely, "This woman originally submitted to the Ruins Emperor and has a strong servile nature. Although her cultivation level is not bad, her potential has not been stimulated. Only extreme danger can stimulate her potential, producing an unyielding fighting spirit that can cleave through and destroy everything. Don't worry. It's just a small god crasher. Her cultivation is at the nascent soul stage and her cultivation method is not bad. She should be able to withstand it." "What if she can't?" Ghost Wolf asked. "I don't keep trash under me. If she can't withstand it, then she's trash and can die," Jiang Tian said with a smile. Ghost Wolf immediately broke out in cold sweat. He thought to himself that he had to raise his cultivation level and fight bravely in the future. Otherwise he would be trash and Zhou Xian would not care about his life. In the void, Long Xingnan looked at Feng Hu calmly with a pair of heroic eyes. She raised her right arm and condensed her chi into a knife with her left hand. She cut off her sleeve and revealed her tender arm. She said coldly, "Senior Feng Hu, I respected you back in the ruins of immortality. I didn't want to meet you on the battlefield today, but you and I serve different masters. There's nothing we can do about it. Next, you and I will have to kill without mercy." She released her fingers and the sleeve fell into the air. "Yes. That goes without saying. Kid, you betrayed the Ruins Emperor and colluded with the bandit Kong Techu. You deserve to die. How can I let you off?" Feng Hu held his knife with one hand and stood with the other by his waist. His tone was light and lukewarm, but it contained a terrifying killing intent and strong confidence. Long Xingnan could not be bothered to talk nonsense with him. She glanced at Bai Muxue, whose clothes were tattered and hair disheveled from the shock waves. She said softly, "Since you want to fight me to your heart's content, Fairy Muxue will only be a hindrance if she's here. Why don't you let her retreat to the flower boat first? I wonder if you'll allow it." "Allow it? She won't be able to escape." Feng Hu's face was calm. Bai Muxue couldn't bear it, but she knew that she couldn't help at all in such a battle between experts. Instead she would become a burden. She bowed and said, "Fairy Xing, take care." Then she flew into the flower boat like a bird. Only Long Xingnan was left on the battlefield, facing a half-step soul formation divine general of the White Tiger Guards alone. If it were before, Long Xingnan would have to bow 3 times and kowtow 9 times to him, not daring to offend him at all. But now she wasn't afraid at all. All she had was a monstrous killing intent and an unyielding fighting spirit. She stomped her foot gently and ripples appeared in the air, as if the space was shaking violently. "Fight!" Boom. Her dantian rumbled like thunder and her golden core in the form of a nascent soul burned crazily, emitting a bright light. 9 dragon-shaped true essence rushed out of her dantian and surrounded her body, completely turning into 9,000 feet long dragons. They were extremely solid and heavy as if they were cast in gold, shining with a dazzling light. The 9 dragons roared to the sky and let out a deafening dragon roar, waving their claws and waving their tails, looking extraordinarily mighty. "Little girl, you want to fight with me? You don't know what's good for you." Feng Hu grunted with disdain. He suddenly clenched his right hand into a fist and threw a punch in the air. That punch was thrown. With a bang, everything within 100 miles trembled. Monstrous waves rose up from the fallen leaf lake, and the surrounding mountains trembled and swayed. The void shattered and the vast power of the laws surged out violently. The flower boat was immediately thrown high by the waves and then fell heavily, sinking into the water under the pressure of the Dharma laws. The rune arrays carved on it flickered, sometimes shining brightly and sometimes dimming. In the end there were countless cracks. Even the crystal battleships behind Feng Hu were pushed back a few hundred meters by his violent Dharma power. Many of the Penglai cultivators present, whether they were in the flower boats or the disciples of the Sirius sect who had retreated to the rear of the battleship, felt a loud bang. It was as if a giant hammer had slammed into their chests. Their bodies flew backward and they were so uncomfortable that they almost spat out blood. Some ordinary people like Fatty Yen fell to their knees on the spot, bleeding from their 7 orifices. This was under the premise that the flower boat's formation had been activated. Otherwise, the aftershock of his punch would have been enough to turn all the cultivators into dust. Just the impact of his punch is already so terrifying. If he punches directly, I'm afraid even a 10-mile mountain would be leveled to the ground. This isn't the power of a human. This is the power of a real entity. Countless people screamed in their minds. In fact, a half-soul formation cultivator was already on a different level compared to a nascent soul cultivator. 9 dragons pillar. Long Xingnan threw a punch and 9 dragons came out together, flying towards Feng Hu's Dharma law fist. Trash. Creatures from the lower worlds are as lowly as ants. How dare you? Feng Hu slowly retracted his fist and put one hand behind his back. He didn't move at all and only snickered. Then, the 9 dragons exploded where the Dharma law fist passed. His Dharma law fist was extremely powerful and struck Long Xingnan's body. Chapter 1522. Crack. Long Xingnan's entire body was filled with the sound of broken bones and tendons. She spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying a few miles away, crashing into a mountain peak. Wherever she passed, the white waves in the lake rose into the air and the rocks on the mountain shot out. The mountain peak caved in, leaving an extremely deep pit. Long Xingnan disappeared without a trace. Humph, how can this little girl resist the power of Divine General Feng's punch? Her body and soul will definitely be destroyed. Next to him, the supreme suzerain of the Sky Wolf sect bowed and said with a flattering expression, "Little girl, no matter how fierce and evil she is no match for the gods of the ruins of immortality. I'm afraid she will be blown up and disappear." In the distance, a group of disciples of the Sky Wolf sect who were prostrating on the ground rose from the ground and laughed wildly. Just as Feng Hu was smiling proudly, Bai Muxue was so sad that she was about to cry, and Fatty Yen and many other cultivators and mortals on the flower boat were sighing with regret. With a boom, rocks flew into the sky and smoke billowed. Long Xingnan suddenly jumped out of the mountain peak like a whistling arrow. Like a flying dragon in the sky, she roared and charged toward Feng Hu again. Her entire body was covered in bloodstains, her clothes were ragged, and her hair was soaked with sweat and blood. She appeared dirty and battered, but her clear eyes seemed to flicker with lightning. Her battle intent was still not weak. Damn it, a cockroach that can't be killed. The suzerain of the Sky Wolf sect gritted his teeth, but his body was honest. He shrank back into the battleship to avoid being implicated. Dragon shakes the sky. Long Xingnan roared. Her dantian trembled crazily and burned her gold core. Suddenly the sky shook, clouds rose and wind and clouds gathered. 9 giant dragons appeared and disappeared in the clouds, giving people a feeling that they could not be caught. The 9 giant dragons flashed above Feng Hu's head in the blink of an eye. They opened their bloody mouths and clawed at Feng Hu, covering the sky and the earth. Thunder and lightning lingered and flames spewed out. The power was so great that it could tear the sky and destroy the giant peak. I didn't expect you to be able to resist my attack. However, I won't give you a second chance. Feng Hu was stunned at first and revealed a look of astonishment. The next moment his face was filled with disdain and contempt as he slashed his saber into the air. Crack! This tiger head saber was a true weapon. It contained the power of the laws, and its power was terrifying beyond compare. Once the saber was unleashed, it instantly shattered the void and caused the firmament to tremble. Wherever the blade pointed, huge spatial cracks spread out like a huge spider web, covering a radius of 10 miles and completely enveloping the 9 huge dragons. Kacha kacha! Cracks appeared on the bodies of the 9 dragons, which were as tough as divine gold. They looked up to the sky and cried out, trying to repair themselves and resist. However, they only lasted for a second before they were torn apart. The cracks spread deep into the dragons' bodies. Finally, the 9 dragons exploded in the air and mushroom clouds rose into the air. Long Xingnan suffered from the backlash of her mana. Her soul, mortal body and golden core were all severely damaged. Her delicate body trembled violently like a withered flower in the wind. She staggered backward and her aura plummeted. Even her golden core had cracks on it. This was the result of her true essence being consumed outside of her body and not being retrieved back into her golden core. Tiger soul shattering roar. Feng Hu wanted to finish the job in one fell swoop. He raised his saber and gripped the hilt tightly with both hands. His eyes flickered with a cold glint and killing intent as he slashed out. Seeing this scene, Ghost Wolf was alarmed. His expression was extremely solemn as he sent a voice transmission with his consciousness. Master, this saber is very powerful. It turned out that this was a saber technique divine power passed down by the Ruins Emperor. It contained extremely complicated and powerful nomological powers. Not only could it destroy the mortal body and shatter the golden core, it could even strike out the soul. It was the most brutal and terrifying move. One had to know that before reaching the true nascent soul realm, the soul, golden core, flesh and blood chi had yet to fuse. The soul was still relatively weak and needed the protection of the golden core and body. Once it was struck out of the body, it would be like a rootless duckweed, easily killed. And without the soul, even if the golden core and body were still present, it would be a true death and fall. Don't help her. Jiang Tian's eyes flickered. His face was as cold as steel and he was abnormally calm. Crack! The saber beam was like a waterfall that descended like a river of stars. It viciously slashed at Long Xingnan's head. Plang! Everyone was shocked to see that. Long Xingnan's soul was struck out of her body. It looked exactly like her, but it was very faint, as if it was formed by moonlight. The next moment her body exploded. Her golden core, which was already in the nascent soul state but had no spirit, was also struck out. Cracks appeared on it before it shattered. I can't accept this. I haven't killed the Ruins Emperor. Then the saber beams stirred and stabbed. Amidst the unwilling roar of the soul, it was directly chopped into pieces and instantly disappeared in the air. This. Ghost Wolf gritted his teeth. Long Xingnan's body and soul had been destroyed. This was a complete death and fall. Fairy Xingnan. Bai Mushue's delicate body trembled. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tears. She was so sad that she could not control herself. She wanted nothing more than to follow her. Villains of the ruins of immortality. Fatty Yen was also gnashing his teeth in hatred. However, he could not change all of this. After all, he was a powerless mortal. Sai, the cultivators of the ruins of immortality are like high and mighty gods. In the end, they can't be defeated. That's right. This is the outcome of challenging the ruins emperor. Death. It's sad, lamentable, and respectable. At that moment, the sound of a flute could be heard. It was soul-stirring. It was Jiang Tian who was holding a verdant flute. His slender fingers would press down on it and lift it up from time to time, and he was unhurriedly playing a song that seemed to be extremely mystical. Your companion has just died. At this time you still have the mood to play the flute. How cold-hearted. At that moment, many cultivators and mortals on the flower boat looked askance at Jiang Tian. Their hearts were filled with contempt and disdain. How is this possible? However, Ghost Wolf was suddenly stunned. He looked at the sky where Long Xingnan had disappeared and saw a shocking scene. He saw Long Xingnan's soul, which had disappeared, reappear out of thin air. First it was her face, then her body, limbs, and then waves of golden core essence, true essence, and blood chi that were constantly floating were pouring into her soul. What? Her soul is actually condensing again? Is she shattering her core to form a nascent soul? Feng Hu was in disbelief as though he had seen the most incredulous thing. As he did not see wrongly. At that moment, Long Xingnan's soul, golden core essence, and body's blood chi were fusing and sublimating. She was shattering her core to form a nascent soul. Moments later, a nascent soul that was about an inch tall was formed. It was like a mini Long Xingnan, but it was many times stronger than the golden core from before. This tune is called Soulless Lure. It's been a long time since I used it. Thankfully, I'm not too unfamiliar with it. After the tune ended, Jiang Tian put down her flute and said languidly. Soulless Lure was a mystic art that specialized in gathering and absorbing the psyche of wandering souls. Before Jiang Tian had the ability to devour souls, he loved using such a mystic art to absorb the psyche of others for his own use. Back then, before his psyche and soul were fully developed, he had used this mystic art to devour many shikigami in the East Ocean. Now Jiang Tian's psyche was many times stronger than before. He had also refined the soul-guiding flute several times, so it was easy for him to use this mystic art again. Most importantly, Long Xingnan's soul had only just dissipated. Many remnant souls had not spread far. Although there were many remnant laws in the void, to Jiang Tian those laws were nothing but trash. This is like bringing the dead back to life. Ghost Wolf was so shocked that he could not say a word. Many cultivators around were dumbfounded. Even Bai Muxue was dumbfounded. Body condensation. Long Xingnan's nascent soul cast a spell and waved her hand. The broken bones and organs floating in the air quickly reformed. A moment later, even the cracks disappeared as if they had been reborn. It was even to the extent that because she'd experienced tempering numerous times, her body had become even more condensed, extraordinarily tough and flawless. The glow of treasures flickered, and her entire body was crystalline and translucent as if it was made from divine glass and precious gold. It emitted an eternal and indestructible aura, and it was like the body of a golden core. Long Xingnan's nascent soul cast a spell and a helmet, armor and boots flew out from her storage bag and wrapped around her body. The nascent soul jumped and entered Long Xingnan's body. Her closed eyes suddenly opened and lightning flashed in the air. At this moment, Long Xingnan's body, which was covered by the armor, was curvaceous and perfect. She was like a female warrior who had descended from the heavens. Her energy surged and she shouted, "Thank you, Senior Feng Hu, for helping me. Tonight I've broken through the bottleneck and become a heavenly lord." Chapter 1523. Long Xingnan had been trying to form her nascent soul for a few years, but she couldn't break her core and form her nascent soul. In essence, she couldn't integrate her divine soul, golden core, and body. Although the levels of the immortal cultivators differed in different civilizations and planets, they were generally divided into 8 levels. The refinement stage, the building foundation stage, the core formation stage, and the nascent soul stage were the lower 4 levels, and the divinity transformation stage, the void return stage, the Tao integration stage, and the tribulation stage were the upper 4 levels. As for the nascent soul realm, it was the peak of the 4 lower realms. Only after taking this step would one be able to dominate the immortal cultivators and be called a high-level chi refinement warrior. Zhang Tian had killed a lot of nascent soul cultivators since he was reborn, but in fact nascent soul cultivators were extremely rare. On an ordinary planet, there might only be 2 or 3 nascent soul cultivators among hundreds of millions of people. They were the ancestral patriarchs of a race or sect. Hylon was a second-class planet in the ruins of immortality, but it wasn't a small planet with life in the universe. It was probably 10 times or even 100 times bigger than Earth. That was why there were several dozens or even dozens of nascent soul cultivators living together. Nascent soul cultivators weren't easy to cultivate. In many cultivation sects, it was easy to form a golden core, but difficult to form a nascent soul. It meant that it was easy to form a golden core but difficult to form a nascent soul. After all, a golden core was just the condensation and solidification of true essence. As long as there was enough spirit qi, the guidance of a master and a suitable qi refinement cultivation art, it would take 100 or even 100 years to form a golden core. As for whether they could release a dharma form, that was another story. They were still powerful without it and there were other ways to make up for it. But it was 10 times or 100 times more difficult to go one step further and reach the nascent soul level. It could be said that only 1 in 10,000 golden core cultivators could become a nascent soul cultivator. Once they reached the nascent soul level, they would be on another level. The nascent soul level was like a second life and it was extremely difficult to destroy. At the golden core level, the body, golden core and divine soul were still separated. The body withstood the divine soul, the golden core released true essence, and the powerful divine soul controlled the true essence to form avatars or dharma forms to attack. But in a battle, golden core perfected cultivators could die if their body, golden core or divine soul were destroyed. As for the nascent soul, it was the combination of the physical body, the divine soul and the golden core. It was much tougher than the golden core and the divine soul was stored in the nascent soul. Its divine powers and dharma laws were extremely powerful, and its vitality was extremely strong. It was very difficult to kill it even if its physical body was destroyed. It was also the foundation of becoming a soul formation cultivator. The problem was that the bodies and cores of the building foundation stage cultivators were extremely tensile. How could they be broken and melted so easily? What was the golden core? The word gold symbolized the immortality of Vajra. Since the golden core was named gold, it represented that it was the world's most perfect, sturdiest and most immortal existence. Even the golden core of an ordinary immortal cultivator would decay after hundreds or even thousands of years. Some cultivators were unable to break through to the nascent soul stage even after a long time. In a moment of desperation, they would even use external forces such as dharma treasures of the earth, fire, wind and thunder dharma treasures to forcefully destroy their nascent soul. Or they would use medicine to forcibly break their nascent soul. It was as if he was committing suicide, putting himself in a desperate situation and fighting to survive. This was the most difficult part of condensing a golden core nascent soul. Zhang Tian had carefully observed Long Xingnan. In fact, her golden core, divine soul and body were already perfect, but she was still unable to condense her nascent soul. Zhang Tian quickly determined that her Dao heart was not tenacious enough, and her psyche was not strong enough. Or to put it simply, she was afraid of death, afraid of failure. And Zhang Tian's plan was to use external forces to torment Long Xingnan, stimulate her potential and uplift her psyche. He would then take the opportunity to fuse the 3 forces into one. The process of shattering the golden core and condensing the nascent soul was extremely painful. It was like being ground by a stone mill, pulverizing one's body and bones. It required one's psyche to be extremely persistent and tenacious, as well as an indomitable will. If not, it was extremely easy to fail. And Long Xingnan, in the midst of battle, especially when she was crushed by the ruins emperor's henchmen, she was even killed once. Only then could her indomitable will be stimulated. At that moment Feng Hu also realized this point. He could not help but feel exasperated as he snorted coldly. "Little lass, you sure are smart. You made me do all the work for you." "That's right. I've already thanked Senior." Long Xingnan chuckled as killing intent bloomed in her eyes. She said coldly, "Next I'll be fighting you to the death." "You are courting death." Feng Hu laughed sinisterly. "You are about to transcend the nascent soul tribulations. That is when you are at your weakest. You might as well be in your nascent soul state. I can kill you with a single point of my finger." The nascent soul was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Apart from needing to fuse the three forces, one also needed to engrave the laws in one's soul. Laws were formed from the vast yuan qi produced by the heaven and earth. They were the limits of yuan qi and maintained the laws of a world. As for cultivators, they seized the creation of the heaven and earth, seizing a portion of the laws for their own use. How could the heaven and earth tolerate such a person? It would definitely be enraged and send down the nascent soul tribulations. As his voice faded, winds stirred and clouds churned. Bolts of lightning that resembled pythons flashed deep within the lead clouds. What kind of nascent soul is this last condensing? This lightning python far exceeds the typical nascent soul lightning tribulation. Feng Hu exclaimed inwardly as he made up his mind. He had to kill Xianxia tonight. If she were to attain her nascent soul in the future, even he would find it difficult to deal with her. Whoosh! He clenched the tiger-headed saber with both hands. His face was filled with killing intent. The nascent soul in the nascent soul, which was close to being a god, roared wildly. The power of laws surged and condensed on the blade. At this moment, everyone felt their hearts palpitate. It was as if their souls were being suppressed and they were unable to use all sorts of magical powers and spells. Feng Hu has the bloodline of a fierce tiger. What he comprehended is the law of tiger might. It is an extremely rare spiritual law. Combined with the true weapon, the tiger-headed saber, he can strike out his opponent's soul and instantly crush it. Ghost Wolf's face turned solemn. He was very worried for Xianxia. At this moment, the thunder tribulation was only brewing and had yet to descend. However, the violent pressure had already arrived. Xianxia was like a bird whose wings had been broken. After falling for several thousand meters, she was finally able to stabilize her body. Feng Hu, shouldn't you consider who exactly condensed my shattered soul? You've lived in the ruins of immortality for thousands of years. Have you ever heard of such a miracle? Just as Feng Hu was about to make a move, Xianxia sat cross-legged in the void with her 5 fingers facing the sky. She was ready to transcend the tribulation. At this moment, Feng Hu noticed that the leisurely and evil sound of the flute had unknowingly sounded out once more. Could it be him? Feng Hu suddenly turned his head and looked at Jiang Tian in the flower boat. His eyes flashed with disbelief. In fact, just now he had used his divine sense to scan the flower boat and recognized Ghost Wolf. However, he did not find Kong Teichu. Because Jiang Tian had suppressed his cultivation to an extremely low level, even Feng Hu did not see any clues. Feng Hu, on the other hand, didn't believe that he would make a mistake with his vision and spiritual sense. Although he discovered Ghost Wolf's presence, he did not act rashly and alert the enemy. Instead, he sent a message to gather the divine generals of the White Tiger Guard. Ghost Wolf was very strong and could completely suppress him. If he made a move now, he might not be able to take advantage of him. His idea was to defeat them one by one. After he killed Xianxia, the reinforcements of the army would also arrive. Therefore, he simply pretended that he did not notice anything. However, he did not expect that Kong Teichu, who was feared by the 9 guards of the ruins of immortality, had already arrived in this world and was right in front of him. Fellow cultivator Feng Hu, you are a senior and a grand heavenly lord after all. You wouldn't go so far as to ambush and bully a kid when he's transcending the tribulation, would you? Jiang Tian rose casually and cupped his hands. He smiled and said, I am Kong Teichu, a cultivator from a remote galaxy. Nice to meet you, fellow cultivator. After hearing that, there was nothing but dead silence in the 10 square kilometers nearby. Rumble. The previously awe-inspiring crystal warships all retreated 10 kilometers away like a bunch of rabbits that were faced with a ferocious tiger. They landed randomly and moved non-stop until they eventually congregated into a defensive formation. On the cruise ship, Wuxia let out a cry of surprise. Her beautiful eyes widened as she looked at Jiang Tian. She was shocked, but at the same time she felt a deep sense of admiration. She didn't expect that the devil Jiang Taichu, whom she had been studying for so long, would be so close to her. Chapter 1524. Clatter, 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 clatter. Fatty Yen was so scared that his teeth were chattering. His face turned pale and his fat jiggled. He couldn't remember how many times he had cursed Kong Teichu just now. If he was Jiang Taichu and heard a mortal, especially an ugly fatty, scolding him like this, he definitely wouldn't let him go. He would beat him up and wipe out his entire family. Yen Li was trembling like a quail and said with tears running down her face, Brother, it's all your fault. Senior, just kill him. Don't hurt the innocent. Don't kill me. Why would I kill you? The ignorant are not guilty. You were just bewitched by the cultivators of this world. Jiang Tian smiled faintly and patted Fatty Yan's shoulder lightly. It's really him. In the void, Feng Hu was so scared that his body trembled. The tiger head blade almost fell to the ground and he almost fell from the sky. The tiger-patterned armor shook and rubbed against each other, making uneasy noises. Cold sweat poured down his forehead like a waterfall. He turned around and glared at the captain of his ship. He wanted to chop the captain into pieces. Damn you. You ran away before I even got on the ship. At the very least, this ship could still withstand Jiang Taichu's attacks. At the most critical moment, it would be a life for Jiang Taichu. The captain noticed his gaze and realized that he had lost his composure. The main ship flew forward for 3 miles and then gradually slowed down. In the end, it stopped a few miles away from Mad Tiger and didn't dare to go any further. Ah, it's Mr. Kong Taichu. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Feng Hu let out a hollow laugh and his clothes were soaked with cold sweat. He cupped his fists and said respectfully, I'm here to catch a thief. I didn't know she was a friend of Cultivator Taichu. Since she's a friend of Cultivator Taichu, she must be a loyal and righteous person. This is all a misunderstanding. Farewell. The Grand Elder of the Heavenly Wolf sect almost fell to the ground. He couldn't believe it. Feng Hu, you're a divine general, yet you're defeated without even a single move. However, he had no idea how terrifying Jiang Tian was in the eyes of the 9 guards. Back then, the Golden Crow Guards, the White Python Guards, and the Dark Crow Guards came together with the 6 heavenly sects of the Hylon world, tens of thousands of Foundation Establishment cultivators, hundreds of Foundation Establishment cultivators, and more than 20 half-step soul formation cultivators to the lower realm to kill Jiang Tian. But in the end, the entire army was wiped out. Feng Hu was only a half-step soul formation cultivator and he was not even as powerful as Shen Chong, the captain of the Golden Crow Guards. Of the dozens of crystal warships that he led, the largest one was merely the main ship, which was only equipped with a small god-destroying light cannon. The mothership of the Gold Crow, which was equipped with countless large god-destroying light cannons, had been blown up by Jiang Tian. It would be strange if Feng Hu wasn't afraid. Of course, as a divine general of the Ruins Emperor's 9 guards, he was loyal to the Ruins Emperor Palace, but loyalty did not mean that he would act rashly. Knowing that he was no match for the enemy, he still fought to the death. He thought that he was hot-blooded, but he ended up dying. That was something only a child would do. Whether it was by Wuxia or Long Xingnan, it did not matter if he did not kill them today. They were just ants who could not change the overall situation. He could always wait for an opportunity to kill them. However, if he were to fight against Kong Taichu, he would probably not even last 10 seconds before being wiped out. Now, the strategy of the Ruins Emperor Palace, 100 Moon Academy, and Sky Palace was to guard the 2nd-level world and kill Kong Taichu in the 3rd-level world. Their target was not the Penglai world but Kong Taichu. In other words, the Penglai world had already been abandoned. It did not matter if the world was lost or the lives of the cultivators and civilians there. Instead, it was treated as a bloody battlefield to slaughter Kong Taichu. In fact, the cultivators and mortals of this world were still unaware that due to the existence of the satellite-grade Qi drawing array, or rather from the moment the array was established, the Ruins of Immortality was only interested in the world's spirit Qi and not them. Even if Kong Taichu occupied the world, as long as the Qi drawing array could not be destroyed, spirit Qi would be constantly extracted and injected into the Ruins of Immortality. Just as Feng Hu finished speaking, he was about to conjure a beam of light and fly away. Hold on. He heard Jiang Tian say indifferently. Daoist Feng Hu, why are you in such a hurry to leave? A chance encounter is not as good as an invitation. Meeting is fate. Please come to the brothel for a drink and talk about life and ideals. Talk about life and ideals? What the hell? Feng Hu's figure froze as he felt depressed. However, there was one thing he understood. Kong Taichu did not want him to leave, but if he were to fall into Kong Taichu's hands and become a hostage, would that be any better? At that moment, boom. A series of loud sounds came from the sky. Long Xingnan had already begun to transcend the tribulation. Violent lightning and thunder dragons smashed down, the wind whistled and the rain poured. Huge waves surged in the fallen leaf lake. Its power was extremely terrifying and intimidating. However, Long Xingnan was not afraid. She tempered her nascent soul with endless thunder and lightning and gradually imprinted a law into it. With the control of her divine soul, her cultivation level soared to an incredible height. I'm a bad-tempered person. If anyone doesn't want to drink with me, I'll want to kill him. Jiang Tian stepped in the air and came to Feng Hu. He patted the small gourd and a round table flew out. There were a few dishes and a pot of fiery wine on it. He smiled and said, "Come, come, thunder and lightning are falling from the sky. With such a storm it's time to drink. Let's have a drink." He sat cross-legged in the void and poured wine on the ground. "I brought the Thunderfire wine from Star World. It's more than 4 light years away and the world passage is closed. You can't drink it anymore. It's the only one. Then I'll do as you say." Feng Hu's smile was uglier than crying. He could only sheath his saber and sit cross-legged on the other side. He took the cup and took a sip. "Since you've drunk my wine, you're my brother," Jiang Tian said with a smile. "Now I'll ask you something. You'll definitely tell me, right?" "What do you want to ask, fellow cultivator Tai Chu?" Feng Hu asked. "The next attack route of the ruins of immortality," Jiang Tian said with a smile. "It's inconvenient for me to reveal that. This is a capital offense. Since we're brothers, I'm sure fellow cultivator Tai Chu won't make things difficult for me." Feng Hu's face turned cold as he said seriously. "You beat up my people, but I won't argue with you. I'll even treat you to a drink. Since you've drunk my wine, you owe me. I'll make things difficult for you. Speak." Jiang Tian slowly put the wine cup on the table. His tone was calm, but his words were incomparably bandit and overbearing. "I'm sorry, but I can't." "Do you want me to kill you?" Fellow cultivator Tai Chu sure is domineering. "However, even if you kill me, I can't say a word. I still have descendants in the ruins of immortality. If I reveal anything, they will definitely suffer. If you kill me, I'll destroy my soul immediately." The corners of Feng Hu's eyes twitched as he pleaded seriously. His right hand slowly gripped the hilt of the tiger-headed saber. His expression was stern as he said loudly, "Activate all the God Slayers. Activate all God-destroying light cannons and target me. Once fellow cultivator Tai Chu attacks, attack immediately. Don't kill fellow cultivator Tai Chu. You can't kill him. Kill me. I don't know how strong the Ruins Emperor is, but the way he trains his lackeys is pretty good. They're loyal." Jiang Tian clapped his hands and praised. "We aren't royalty, nor are we the elites of 100 Moon Academy or Sky Palace. They are the ones who are truly loyal. They know even more secrets." Feng Hu smiled modestly. His smile was unyielding as though his muscles were being stretched. Cold sweat rolled down his forehead as his true weapon-grade protective Dharma artifacts and tiger-skinned armor emitted a faint glow. His dermic powers fluctuated slightly as he accumulated strength. The hilt of the saber in his hand creaked from his grip. "Prince Spring Rain, I shouldn't have killed you so easily. I should have searched your soul." Jiang Tian shook his head regretfully, causing the corners of Feng Hu's eyes to twitch even more intensely. Then he said calmly, "Brother Feng Hu, do you know that I'm best at searching souls? Your god-vanquishing cannons haven't even been activated, but I can search all the information in your soul. Fellow cultivator Tai Chu, you might not know this, but I'm known as the Tiger Deterrence General in the Ruins of Immortality. I'm best at attacking souls. Fellow cultivator Tai Chu, please be careful. Don't try to plunder my soul." Feng Hu's tiger-headed saber hummed as though it was about to shatter its scabbard and fly out. He retorted, "Then let's give it a try." Jiang Tian laughed. Suddenly, the golden lake on his forehead flashed as the soul-devouring divine sense instantly erupted. Chapter 1525. Release the god-killing light cannons and kill me. Feng Hu yelled as soon as Jiang Tian said that. The tiger-head-long blade shattered the scabbard, and the fragments of the scabbard shot out in all directions. The blade was like a knife cutting through water, emitting a frightening cold light, and with a thunderous momentum, it slashed towards Jiang Tian's soul-devourer divine sense that was attacking like a tentacle. Feng Hu had used all his power as a half-soul formation cultivator. Boundless spiritual pressure rolled out like a tidal wave and smashed down. It had already materialized, causing the lake water within a radius of 10 miles to ripple and the mountains to shake. The blade was intimidating and fierce. It was designed to suppress all kinds of soul energy and soul energy attacks, trying to cut off Jiang Tian's immortal will. At the same time, the god-killing light cannons on the dozens of crystal battleships were activated. Pillars of light as thick as buckets shot through the air toward Feng Hu. A single beam of light was enough to crush a nascent soul stage Heavenly Lord or even a half-step divine transformation stage Heavenly Lord into dust along with his nascent soul. Feng Hu was resolute and didn't leave any way out. He would rather die than reveal the defense of the ruins of deity and the next step of the attack. He didn't want to live at all. The two of them were very close to each other. After a muffled sound, the Soul Devourer's immortal will and the tiger-headed blade clashed. Under the pressure of the Soul Devourer's immortal will, the tiger-headed blade with countless rune arrays was shattered inch by inch. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The sharp blades shot out in all directions for several miles, cutting many cracks in the void. In a blink, Feng Hu saw Jiang Tian push him gently with his right hand, as if he were opening the door of his own room. His divine sense saw that 100 meters behind him, a golden shield was holding up the sky. This protective shield was like a huge shield with a radius of tens of meters. There were countless patterns of Dharma laws on it like true gold. It was dazzling and unbelievably heavy. It seemed indestructible and unshakable. The light beams that could penetrate mountains and melt treasure metals didn't even leave the tiniest mark. The successive shocks made Feng Hu's face pale with disbelief. His tiger-headed blade was an indestructible Dharma treasure at the true artifact level and was good at soul energy attacks. Soul energy wasn't as strong as a physical body and was much weaker. And yet, Jiang Tian's Soul Devourer's immortal will broke the tiger-headed blade. The god-killing light cannons couldn't penetrate the true essence shield formed by Jiang Tian. He couldn't believe it. That Kong Teichu, don't even think about it. He wanted to explode his nascent soul. Unfortunately, he didn't even have the time to activate his soul consciousness before Jiang Tian's black soul-devouring soul consciousness invaded his brain like a black lightning. How is that possible? This was the last thought in his mind. His entire body sank into eternal darkness and chaos, and his spirit was completely covered and enveloped by the soul devourer. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Seeing that Feng Hu had been captured, the crystal warships retreated like rabbits facing a tiger. The Grand Elder of the Heavenly Wolf sect and the other cultivators were scared out of their wits. They trembled and didn't dare to come again. However, Ghost Wolf held his air-piercing saber and charged forward silently. A few seconds later, violent explosions and the sound of huge objects crashing to the ground came from 15 kilometers away. The earth quaked and the mountains shook. Everyone saw large balls of fire explode in the sky, and red mushroom clouds rise, like blooming flowers of fire. Ghost Wolf had already returned to the boat leisurely. Bai Muxue was so scared that her face turned pale. She asked, "Senior, this is..." "Fortunately, I didn't fail my mission and wiped them out," Ghost Wolf said coldly and expressionlessly. Bai Muxue shuddered in fear. He was only Kong Teichu's follower, and yet he was already so powerful. Kong Teichu's strength was unimaginable. Jiang Tian soon found all the information in Feng Hu's mind. He couldn't help but reveal a worried look. The reaction speed and mobilization ability of the Ruins Emperor's descendants are truly terrifying. Now many level 2 worlds including Hailan have set up countless magnificent defense lines. They're like torrents of iron chains. They've also built countless powerful fortresses that almost cover the entire world. There are half-soul formation grand cultivators or even soul formation grand cultivators in those fortresses. Besides, thousands of shocking cultivators have either entered the Pinglai world through the portal or crossed the sky on space warships to attack the Dragon Gate, the Baiming world and the Ingzhou world. There are even soul formation grand cultivators. They're trying to kill me and wipe out my base. Jiang Tian looked extremely solemn at that moment. It was the first time since his rebirth that he felt that the situation was tricky and not easy to deal with. There was no other reason. He hadn't completed the 9 transformations of the Divine Plate and broken his core to form the nascent soul. After all, he was still trying to form the nascent soul. With his current strength, killing half-soul formation grand cultivators was no problem, but it would be extremely difficult for him to deal with normal soul formation grand cultivators. He had to use the Heaven Severing Sword. However, the Heaven Severing Sword was a deity artifact. Every time he used it, it would cost him a lot of energy. He could deal with 1 soul formation grand cultivator, but what if a few or a dozen soul formation grand cultivators attacked at the same time? What if a top soul formation grand cultivator attacked? The chances of him dying would be extremely high. Besides, the Ruins Emperor had stopped his life for 1,000 years and hadn't attacked for a few thousand years. Nobody knew exactly how powerful he was. If he reached the Void Return or the Dao Reunion level, Jiang Tian wouldn't be able to withstand one of his attacks. Cultivation and strength. I can't care about those details anymore. The most important thing now is to improve my cultivation and strength at all costs. Jiang Tian slowly opened his eyes and 2 beams of light flashed in them. His face was as cold as iron and he looked extremely determined. Jiang Tian stood up and kicked the table away. He then raised his hand and shattered Feng Hu's body, leaving only the nascent soul that had lost its divine soul to be devoured by the Taotai restoration. He glanced at Long Xian and said, "Long Xian, hurry up and get ready. I'm going to help you go through the tribulation quickly, but the pain you'll have to endure will be 10 times or 100 times more than before. The chances of you dying are also extremely high. Senior, I'm not afraid." Long Xingnan shouted as she was bathed in lightning. Her body, nascent soul and divine soul cracked and reformed again and again. Jiang Tian's expression was calm. He patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd at his waist and the time array disc flew 10,000 feet into the sky above the tribulation clouds. Under the acceleration of the time array disc. Boom, boom. The nascent soul tribulation lightning descended at a speed 10 times or 100 times faster than before. Countless lightning pythons gathered, almost forming rivers of lightning and flames that smashed down. The lightning was extremely bright and as thick as a river. It illuminated the sky and completely enveloped Long Xingnan. It illuminated a radius of 10 miles and shook everything within 100 miles. Oh my God, how can there be such a tribulation transcendence in this world? This is probably even more terrifying than the soul formation tribulation transcendence. Ghost Wolf considered himself a ruthless person, but he had never seen someone as ruthless as Jiang Tian. He actually accelerated Long Xingnan's tribulation lightning 10 times or 100 times faster. Cold sweat rolled down his forehead like a waterfall. Needless to say, the other cultivators were so scared that their faces were pale and they were trembling. These tribulation lightning were too terrifying. They thought that if they touched a trace of lightning, they would be turned into ashes. They saw it. Long Xingnan was flying up and down like a withered leaf in a long river of thunder and lightning. She screamed in pain, and her glowing body split and merged even faster, as if she was dying over and over again and was reborn over and over again. Finally, after 20 minutes, the thick clouds dissipated. The lightning became smaller and disappeared. The rain and wind also stopped. The starry night sky that looked like inlaid gems was revealed. The milky moonlight poured down and the world returned to calmness. Only Long Xingnan was left floating in the air. Her beautiful eyes were slightly closed as if she was comprehending something. The law of the real dragon. Suddenly she opened her eyes. In the void, 2 dragon-shaped lightning flashed and rushed out. In the nascent soul, a miniature nascent soul roared. 9 dragons of laws rushed out and surrounded Long Xingnan, who was wearing dazzling armor, golden boots and a dragon crown. They roared and bared their fangs and brandished their claws, making her look incomparably mighty, as if a peerless war goddess had descended. Congratulations, Fairy Xingnan, for stepping into the nascent soul realm and becoming a heavenly lord. Congratulations, Senior Taichu, for getting a powerful helper. Seeing her so mighty and powerful, Bai Muxue and the other cultivators and mortals on the flower boat were so scared that they kept quiet and kowtowed together. Not bad, I didn't teach you in vain. You have comprehended the law of the real dragon. You are worthy of me. Jiang Tian showed a gratified look. He put his hands behind his back and nodded slightly. Master, please accept my kowtow. I will never forget your kindness. Long Xingnan kowtowed in the void, tears falling like rain. Kongteichi, where's Feng Hu? Suddenly, an explosive shout that was like a thunderclap resounded, and it shook everyone to the point their heads buzzed. Swish, swish, swish. Streaks of dazzling escape light streaked across the sky from all directions like rainbows. They traversed 100 miles in the blink of an eye. Their speed was unimaginably fast. The light suddenly stopped. It turned out to be 8 divine generals who were half a step away from the soul formation level, surrounding Jiang Tian in the middle. Those divine generals had different temperaments. Some were as dark as smoke, some were as fierce as ancient beasts, some were as sharp as a peerless heavenly sword, Some were as heavy as mountains and some were as bright as the sun and the stars. Even though their temperaments were completely different, all of them were extremely powerful without exception. Their nascent souls were extremely powerful and they were not far away from becoming gods. Swords, halberds, flames, ice, miraculous trees, ferocious birds, ferocious beasts, poisonous mist. Laws of all shapes and colors coiled around his body, and some even had more than one type of law, causing him to seem extraordinarily mighty and terrifying to the extreme. He drank my wine and didn't speak properly, so I killed him. Zhang Tian was not afraid. He sneered mockingly and said, "You're right. Everyone from the White Tiger Guards, you're quite impressive. Do you know that the White Tiger on Earth refers to a woman with a special body? A female cultivator with the White Tiger bloodline. What's so strange about that?" Many divine generals didn't know why Zhang Tian mentioned that, but they understood the first sentence Zhang Tian said. Their comrade Feng who had been killed. They couldn't help but fly into a rage and curse. "How dare you, you traitor! You killed my 9 divine generals. Do you think the guards of the Ruins Emperor's palace are easy to bully? You're too arrogant. Today I'll definitely grind your body to dust and extract your divine soul. Only then can I vent the hatred in my heart." Although they were cursing fiercely, they didn't immediately take action, as if they were waiting for an important figure to arrive. As expected. Moments later, a middle-aged man with wide sleeves and a wide belt walked over. He was dressed in the robes of the 9 Dragons Emperor and had 12 crowns on his head. He looked extremely dignified. "Kong Teichu, were you the one who killed my son Chunyu?" He bellowed fiercely as lightning shot out from his eyes. The 17th imperial grandson of the Ruins Emperor, the one who was once the previous Ruins Emperor, Emperor Hanshi. The instant he saw the person, Ghost Wolf could not help but turn pale with fright. He subconsciously took a few steps back as his pupils constricted to the size of needle tips. Chapter 1526. He was a soul formation mighty figure. The term Ruins Emperor had 2 meanings. First, it referred to the Ruins Emperor himself, who was also known as the Ancestor Emperor. Secondly, it referred to the Ruins Emperor lineage he founded and the Ruins Emperor dynasty he established. In fact, ever since the Ruins Emperor slaughtered the ancient paragons of the Immortal lands and suppressed the nomads of the Immortal lands, he had entered a state of intermittent blood condensation and lifespan stoppage. Otherwise, even at the soul formation realm, he would not have been able to withstand the corrosion of time. As for his Ruins Emperor dynasty, after tens of thousands of years of reproduction, it had already given birth to 18 generations of descendants. Every generation had thousands of direct descendants. As the Ruins Emperor's lineage cultivated in top cultivation techniques, they had extremely long lifespans. It resulted in the grand occasion of 18 generations discussing politics together. The Ruins Emperor had 18 generations of descendants, but not everyone could obtain the Ruins Emperor's recognition and grace to ascend to the position of Ruins Emperor. Those who could rise to the top had to have extraordinary talent and a powerful cultivation level. They had to reach the soul formation realm. Furthermore, they had to be adept in both civil and military matters. They had to have a majestic bearing that could swallow the world as well as the talent to help the people. Furthermore, they had to contribute greatly to the ruins of immortality. Only then could they stand out from the other royal descendants and become the Ruins Emperor. It could be said that they were 1 in a million, as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. There were even cases where no one from the royal family ascended to the throne. In the Ruins Emperor dynasty, there were a total of 10 emperors among the countless princes and descendants in the past 10,000 years. And Emperor Hanshi was one of them. As he had reached the soul formation realm, he was also known as Divine Emperor Hanshi. Ghost Wolf, you still recognize this emperor. Back then, if I had not forgiven you for your assassination, you would have perished centuries ago. You would have long been reduced to a pile of bones. Emperor Hanshi stood in midair, dressed in a dragon robe and a flat imperial crown. He exuded a regal aura as he exuded a dignified aura. He looked to be in his 40s. He only had 2 or 3 wrinkles, but his crystalline eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life and profoundness. They were filled with the vicissitudes of time and contained infinite wisdom and truth. He simply stood there without using any dermic powers or divine powers. Yet he floated in midair as though he was meant to be standing there. It was natural. As his words faded, his aura tore through the skies. His eyes darted around as lightning flashed in them as he looked at Ghost Wolf. He only glanced over. With a clang, the Ghost Wolf seemed to have been hit in the chest by a 1,000-kilogram hammer. Blood spurted out of its mouth as it was blown away miserably. The endless reinforcing rune arrays were destroyed, and a huge hole was smashed on the bottom of the boat. Instantly it sank into the lake and disappeared. Xianxia was shocked. Her heart was pounding and her face was pale. Senior Ghost Wolf was most proficient in assassination and escape techniques. The void-piercing blade could break through space and instantly disappear from this world. However, he couldn't even avoid the might of a single glance from the world-shaking Divine Emperor. However, she did not retreat. Instead, her aura rose steadily as she released 9 true dragons of law, intending to fight alongside Zhang Tian. On the flower boat, with the hole created by the Ghost Wolf as the center, the array glyphs on the inner wall of the cabin quickly dimmed. The light of the treasure was extinguished, and huge cracks as thick as an arm crazily spread out like a spider web, covering the entire flower boat in an instant. Everyone run. Bai Mushua's heart turned cold. With a wave of her sleeves, she rolled up Fatty Yen and the rest of the mortals in the cabin and flew up into the sky. The other cultivators were also shocked. Like a group of startled grasshoppers and birds, they quickly flew away and left. As soon as they left, the Dharma power contained in the collapsed array glyphs in the flower boat exploded uncontrollably. Flames shot up into the sky and the billowing airwaves set off monstrous waves. The flower boat was instantly torn apart and turned into ashes. It's too terrifying. Senior Ghost Wolf was killed with just a glance, and the aftermath tore apart the flower boat that could withstand the attack of a golden core cultivator. Many cultivators of Penglai stood on the shore of the Fallen Leaves Lake and exclaimed. Their hearts fell into the abyss and their legs turned to jelly. They couldn't wait to kneel down and surrender. This is a real god. As for Fatty Yen and his brothers and the rest of the mortals, they had already prostrated themselves on the ground in fear. They couldn't wait to turn into ostriches and stick their heads into the soil. Such terrifying strength. Even Bai Mushua's pretty face was solemn. The strength of the Penglai world was really too far away from the ruins of immortality. She had no doubt that the world-shaking Divine Emperor alone could flatten this world and exterminate all life. No one could stop him. At this time Xianxia also felt cold. She had told Sword Master Outyen of the Heaven Baron sect to close all the teleportation arrays from the ruins of immortality in Hylon to this world. How did they get in? Even the fastest interstellar ship couldn't be this fast, right? Although the world-shaking Divine Emperor wasn't a top soul formation cultivator and couldn't be compared to the headmaster of the academy, the sword god of the ruins Emperor Palace or the Star Lord of Sky Palace, he was one of the 10 divine emperors in the history of the ruins Emperor Palace after all. He had entered the soul formation level for hundreds of years and was far more powerful than Shinchong and the other guards that Zhang Tian had met before. I felt the space fluctuation from the Northern Ocean world to this world, so I came to Maple City from the Heaven Baron sect and have been searching for 2 hours. Now you've killed my White Tiger guards and caused a storm of blood. You deserve to die to atone for your sins of killing my son, the spring rain and my golden crows. The world-shaking Divine Emperor's face was as cold as iron and his eyes were full of viciousness. He waved his hand and 2 men flew out of his sleeve like flies. They turned into the size of a normal person. They were Sword Master Outyen and Zhongzi Zhang Qingyang of the Heaven Baron sect. When the 2 of them saw Zhang Tian and Xianxia, they shouted desperately, "Senior Ancestor, please leave quickly." The world-shaking Divine Emperor used a Daoist artifact secret treasure to break the space and go through the teleportation arrays. He also opened the other teleportation arrays. The Heaven Baron sect has been destroyed. Before they could finish, the Divine Emperor Hanshi grabbed their nascent souls and golden cores and put them into his storage bag before he said calmly, "Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a chance to escape. According to the law, they should be killed immediately and their families should be exterminated. I didn't kill them because I was afraid that you, Kong Teichu, would run away because you're an abandoned person of the small planet and I would have to chase after you. Thief, if you dare to run away, you'll all die here." At this time Ghost Wolf crawled out of the alternate space covered in blood. However, he didn't dare to come close. On a mountain 100 miles away, he stealthily appeared and disappeared from time to time. He used his soul consciousness to send a message, "Senior, let's retreat. We can't defeat him. He's a soul formation cultivator. Outyan. Zhang Qinyang. Exterminate the sect. Jiang Tian narrowed his eyes and a cold glitter flashed. Even though Sword Master Outyan and Zhang Qinyang were originally people of the ruins of immortality, they had quickly joined his side and even gave him the top secret information about the Pearl Tree. They were captured, their sects were exterminated, and their families were killed because of him. How could Jiang Tian not be angry? Ghost Wolf, Long Xingnan by Wuxia, you three used to be people of the ruins of immortality, but you became friends with bandits and joined the abandoned people of the ruins of immortality. I'll take you back to the ruins of immortality and kill you on the deity-slaying platform in front of everyone as a warning to others. The world-shaking Divine Emperor reached out his hand. 3 surges of boundless true essence suddenly burst forth. The first one pressed down on the mountain 100 miles away. The sea of clouds suddenly caved in, revealing the shape of a giant palm. Ghost Wolf immediately noticed it. He kept stabbing with his ear-piercing sword and used the power of laws. But how could he resist the attack of a soul formation cultivator? A soul formation cultivator had reached the edge of the Grand Tao and was the infinite sublimation of the laws. For example, the laws were like a straw rope and the Grand Tao was like a carbon steel rope. Even if there was only a trace of the latter, it was still a qualitative difference. How could he resist it? Boom. The clouds were broken and cracks appeared on the ear-piercing sword. A giant palm with traces of the Grand Tao wrapped around it grabbed Ghost Wolf. The second one appeared by the lake and took Bai Wuxia away as easily as a dragon eagle catching a Chinese alligator. The third one also crushed the 9 true dragons formed by Long Xingnan and took her behind him. He cast a spell and shackles containing the fragments of the Grand Tao immediately sealed the 3 of them. Unless he activated it or died, Ghost Wolf and Long Xingnan wouldn't be able to break free at all. Then the world-shaking Divine Emperor looked at Jiang Tian with disdain and said coldly, "It's rare to have a genius like you in the desolate and remote solar system. Unfortunately, you shouldn't have provoked the royal family of the ruins of immortality. You shouldn't have meddled in the worlds of the South Gate 2 stars. You can never imagine the terrifying power of the real royal family of the ruins of immortality. You can only look up to them and never reach them in your life. Your ancestor, the virtuous sage, was defeated by the ancestral emperor of the ruins of immortality. Today you will also be defeated by me." When he spoke, he was very calm, as if a deity had come to enforce the law and sentence Jiang Tian to death. Chapter 1527. Ghost Wolf, Long Xingnan and Bai Wuxia were imprisoned by the shackles of the Great Way. They were all wailing in their hearts as if they were facing a formidable enemy. The pressure that Divine Emperor Hanshi brought to them was unprecedented. It wasn't because they were timid and weak, but because Divine Emperor Hanshi was too powerful. This was a glorious Divine Emperor. His natural talent was extraordinary, and his cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. He had once shaken a world and suppressed the boundlessly vast territory of the ruins of immortality. He stood out from the countless imperial clan disciples of his generation and ascended to the position of Divine Emperor. That's terrifying. He's a real overlord of the royal family. Ghost Wolf even felt that even if the leaders of the 9 troops all attacked, they wouldn't be a match for him and would be killed in an instant. At the moment, Divine Emperor Hanshi hadn't moved yet. The essence chi in 100-mile radius froze. The nascent soul in Divine Emperor Hanshi's body turned into a divine treasure, which was like an immortal palace. The nascent soul had evolved into a god, as if it contained the power of a star that could destroy the world. Once he attacked, the area within a 1,000-mile radius would be razed to the ground. He was like a god that had descended and killed everything. Long Xingnan also turned pale. Bai Wuxia's heart was already cold as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. He was a soul formation grand cultivator, the previous emperor of the ruins of immortality. He was a giant in the royal family who had always been outstanding in Shaktan era. He was invincible even in the ruins of immortality. The ordinary chancellor of the 100 Moon Academy, the monster on the God of War list and the leaders of the 9 troops were all inferior to him. He was invincible in the ruins of immortality, except for the headmaster, the sword god and Lord Tai Bai Wuxia. Although Jiang Tian was powerful, he was still a nascent soul cultivator and a golden core cultivator after all. He still controlled Dharma laws. No matter how strong he was, it would still be difficult for him to fight against a soul formation cultivator. Senior. When Long Xingnan murmured and wanted to persuade Jiang Tian to immediately escape 10,000 miles away to preserve his strength, Jiang Tian had already stepped into the sky and said, "Divine Emperor Hanshi, this place is too narrow. Godly Emperor Hanshi, this place is too narrow. Let's enter the boundless starry sky and fight to our heart's content." His face was calm. Lightning sparkled in his eyes. His god body bloomed with dazzling light that made him look like a god of war. "Ah, Kong Teichu, you're treating this place as your territory and the living beings as your people. You're afraid that they'll die if they're destroyed. You're really a lunatic." Hanshi Divine Emperor's face was full of mockery, his eyes full of contempt. He then turned into an incomparably dazzling bolt of lightning and shot straight into the sky, saying, "Fine, I'll fulfill your wish. I'll go fight in the outer realms. Outside this world, in outer space, I will use all my power to kill you to the point of despair. I will extract your soul and refine your bones. Only then can I wash away the pain of losing my son. This world originally belonged to the celestial land. How can I fall into the hands of you rascals? I'm the descendant of a sage from the deity ground. Today I'll show you how I'm going to dominate the universe." Jiang Tian grunted and his face was as cold as steel. The 10-foot divine wheel behind him spun and carried him into the sky. Now, besides the wood elemental, earth elemental and water elemental golden cores, the other laws on the 9 transformations of the disk had already been extremely condensed, and they'd formed the true seal of the laws. It was like 9 rivers of stars were revolving and emanating a myriad of rays of light, causing it to seem even more resplendent and gorgeous. His body was surrounded by golden flames and he tore the dimension apart like a golden shooting star. He shot straight from the ground to the sky, shaking the world. 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers, 10,000 kilometers. Jiang Tian didn't stop. In front of everyone's shocked eyes, Jiang Tian directly went out of the atmosphere and tore open the boundary with the Kunpeng laws, arriving in outer space. He stood with his hands behind his back. The 10-foot divine wheel behind him spun slowly and shone brightly like the sun in the sky. In front of him was the divine King Hanshi. Behind him was the vast universe and the asteroid belt that surrounded the planet Penglai. There were even the remains of giant battleships and Dharma artifacts floating in the air. They were the remains of the ancient battle. This was a good space battlefield. A battle in outer space. It hasn't happened in Penglai for many years. Bai Muxue and the other cultivators of Penglai were also shocked. Their Immortal will couldn't detect Jiang Tian and the divine King Hanshi anymore. They were too far away. It's rare even in the Hylon world. Even nascent soul heavenly lords don't want to go to outer space. Long Xingnan was also shocked and looked serious. Logically speaking, golden core cultivators should be able to traverse the void with their physical bodies and travel in outer space. Because their bodies were extremely tough, they weren't afraid of the negative air pressure in the vacuum. Their golden cores could also provide endless blood qi and nourishment, so they weren't afraid of losing the support of the essence qi of heaven and earth. And yet, even golden core cultivators and nascent soul heavenly lords wouldn't want to go to outer space without the help of Dharma artifacts such as universe armors and interstellar ships. That place was full of mysterious and unknown forces, such as magnetic storms, dimensional fragments, super radiation particles and even the remains of battleships, Dharma treasures and waves of Dharma laws. Even a golden core perfected cultivator or a nascent soul cultivator could be strangled. I can't see anything. I wonder who's stronger, Kong Teichu or the divine King Hanshi. After God Emperor Hanshi left, Fatty Yen felt a bit more relaxed. He didn't lie there anymore and instead stood up gloomily. Apparently, Senior Taichu is stronger. Ghost Wolf snorted and looked at the White Tiger Divine Generals with a sneer. Brothers, let me go so that I can plead for you guys in front of Senior Taichu. Otherwise you'll die. In the distance, a divine general slapped him in the face and sneered, "You're too arrogant. Jiang Taichu, it's already amazing that he killed some divine generals. He's no match for the divine King Hanshi. Ghost Wolf, you idiot. Why have you become so stupid after following an ant for a few days? Mo Yang, if it weren't for my chains, you would have been dead." Ghost Wolf said. Mo Yang used to be his subordinate, the Dark Crow Guards, but he wasn't as powerful as him. He used to bow to him, but now he thought he was a pushover. Ghost Wolf, you've cast your pearls before swine. How dare you threaten us divine generals? You're a prisoner now. How dare you be so arrogant? You're asking for it. Slap, slap, slap. The other divine generals all struck out and slapped him a few times. After dozens of slaps, Ghost Wolf was sent flying. Blood spurted from his nose and his teeth were about to fall out. Ghost Wolf was suppressed by the chains. He could easily kill him, but without the order of the divine King Xianxia, they didn't dare to kill him. However, humiliating Ghost Wolf was unavoidable. Ghost Wolf, you're not convinced. This god will let you see clearly how the Jiang Taichu you worship as a god will die miserably. Mo Yang sneered in a mocking manner. He waved his right hand and released a few detection Dharma artifacts. Those Dharma artifacts looked like eyeballs and had lines of pupil patterns. Under his command, all of the probing magical artifacts shot into outer space like shooting stars, covering hundreds of miles in an instant. He took out a golden ball with his right hand. The golden ball floated in the air. He pointed in the air and a huge golden screen appeared. The screen was huge. It was dozens of meters wide and was divided into several squares. It was the image of the battlefield outside the city where Jiang Tian and the divine King Xianxia were. It was shown from several angles and was very vivid. In the desolate outer space there were huge, cold, black meteorites, rusty ancient chariot wreckage and huge skeletons floating. They gave off an ancient and lonely aura. In this desolate battlefield, Jiang Tian and the divine King Xianxia faced each other coldly. They didn't talk much. The divine King Xianxia's eyes were filled with hatred for Jiang Tian. He had made up his mind to kill him. Only by killing Jiang Tian could he wash away the hatred in his heart for the death of Prince Spring Rain and the 9 guards. Only by killing Jiang Tian could he restore the supreme dignity of the Ruins Emperor's bloodline and become an undefeatable legend. Jiang Tian had to be killed too. Only by removing their coefficients could he close the World Hole teleportation array and prevent them from using the World Hole to teleport here. This would buy him some time. Only by killing the divine King Xianxia could he save Ghost Wolf, Long Xingnan, Proud Heaven Swordmaster and the rest. He could find the Pearl Tree and push his cultivation to another level. This battle was even related to the safety of the solar system. This was an unavoidable battle. Both sides were filled with killing intent. They were determined to kill each other. Their eyes were cold and their faces were as cold as steel. Chapter 1528. At the same time, Jiang Tian and divine King Xianxia hadn't done anything yet. They only released their energy slowly and it interfered with the boundary and atmosphere below. All of a sudden the spatial barrier trembled. Layers of clouds rolled, lightning flashed, rain poured down and violent winds howled, causing all sorts of phenomena at the celestial phenomenon level. Even if it happened in the ruins of immortality, it would still attract the attention of hundreds of millions of cultivators. Why is the boundary shaking so violently? Are interstellar spaceships forcing their way in? On top of a mountain peak that was tens of thousands of meters tall, it was verdant and lush with lush vegetation. Spiritual chi lingered like mist. This was a large sect in this world called the Sunset Beauty Sect. In the extreme west, several purple-haired female cultivators walked out of a palace hall and looked at the sky in horror. What should we do? Activate the array. All disciples, put on your protective Dharma artifacts. Prepare for battle. They were panicking. This was an extremely rare situation. They had only heard of it happening in other worlds, but it had never happened in this world. Even though they were all golden core cultivators, they couldn't withstand the energy. Even the boundary was about to be torn apart. Don't panic. It should be a battle between the soul formation overlords of the ruins of deity and Kong Techu. The sect master walked out. She was an old woman with a kind face. Her old eyes were filled with endless vicissitudes and wisdom. What? Kong Techu? A soul formation grand cultivator. No wonder the energy is so strong. They should be outside the boundary at least 10,000 miles away. We can't withstand it. A group of disciples kept talking and their eyes were full of shock. They had all heard of Kong Techu's fierce name, but they had never thought that he would arrive so soon. If I'm not mistaken, Divine King Xianxia is here. Kong Techu is really making a big fuss. The old woman looked at the sky with her deep eyes. She couldn't calm down and there were waves in her heart. She had heard some news from a secret channel and it was finally confirmed. This battle was earth-shattering. It would undoubtedly cause a huge wave and completely change the history of this world. Kong Techu is really here? He's facing Divine King Xianxia on the battlefield outside the ruins of deity. Oh God. It's a world-shaking battle that's rarely seen since ancient times. The news gradually spread. There was no wall that didn't have a crack. This kind of battle was too shocking and couldn't be hidden. Many great sects released their surveillance artifacts to observe the battle from afar. Their hearts were on tenterhooks. This battle would determine the ownership of the Penglai world. It was closely related to them and no one could ignore it. In the meantime, on Fallen Leaf Lake, the news of the Heavenly Wolf sect Holy Pearl Palace, and many other independent cultivators being wiped out by Zhang Tian and the others had also spread. The bandit Kong Teichu has repeatedly stirred up bloody storms. Damn it! My son Han Tianyong had the potential to be an emperor, but he fell at the hands of Kong Teichu. I can't accept it, I hate it. Humph, Kong Teichu is indeed very strong. Unfortunately, he doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He actually dared to provoke a god king. I wonder how miserable his death will be. This is a frog at the bottom of a well. He doesn't know the vastness of the starry sky and the vastness of the universe. He thinks that just because he can occupy the peak of a few remote worlds, he has the qualifications to challenge the supreme giants. The ignorant are fearless. He has to die. He has to die. Because of the bloody battle at Fallen Leaf Lake, many people hated Zhang Tian. They couldn't wait for Zhang Tian to immediately die at the hands of God King Xianxia to vent their hatred. Even some unrelated people didn't think highly of Zhang Tian. The power of the ruins of immortality was deeply rooted in their hearts. Even the guests from the second-level worlds were like gods in their eyes. Not to mention that the God King Xianxia had already produced gods and reached the soul formation stage. He used to be an emperor. This was a completely unequal war. Suddenly the world quieted down. All the cultivators, mortals and even monsters felt extremely frightened. They almost lay on the ground, trembling physically and mentally as if they had reached the end of their lives. Two peerless heavenly powers came from the sky. This majesty was peerless and dignified, making people feel suffocated. Even golden core and nascent soul cultivators couldn't resist it. Their bodies stiffened and they wanted to kneel down. Only Ghost Wolf, Long Xingnan and Mo Yang from the upper world could stay in the sky. On the Fallen Leaf Lake side, the cultivators and mortals went into the nearby caves and looked at the light screen in the sky from afar. Will Senior Taichu win? Bai Mushue's face turned pale. She once heard from her master that as long as a cultivator entered the foundation establishment stage, every step after that was a natural chasm. Every time a cultivator crossed a natural chasm, their strength wouldn't increase by 1 or 2 times, but by 10 or 20 times. Before that, she had never seen a nascent soul or soul formation cultivator. Today was really an eye-opener. At this time, even though Zhang Tian and God King Xianxia were in the outer realm, the majesty they displayed had already affected the vast territory of the entire Penglai world. They had the power to move mountains, fill seas and pick stars and moons. This was the power of gods. Senior Taichu's cultivation level is far lower than his, but his divine powers are vast and the grade of his laws is extremely high, comparable to the Great Tao. He has been undefeated in 10,000 battles before, so he will definitely be able to defeat his opponents today. Ghost Wolf glared at Mo Yang and the others. He thought that as long as Senior Taichu killed God King Xianxia, he would definitely avenge the humiliation he had suffered just now and kill all of them. Mo Yang and the others ignored the hidden meaning in Ghost Wolf's words. They just stared at the golden light screen without blinking. Although they had praised God King Xianxia before, they couldn't help but feel a bit worried at this time. In the outer realm battlefield, Zhang Tian and God King Xianxia were 10 miles away from each other. They released their power and clashed together like a stormy sea. Boom. After the collision, the dimension shook and turned into 2 giant vortexes, crazily colliding and tearing at each other. At this moment, the gigantic world membrane that was like a dome had caved in with a radius of 10 miles. The space runes that had been suppressed were activated. They flickered fiercely and intertwined with the twisted starlight and moonlight, forming a magnificent picture. However, at this moment no one could ignore this great battle. Whether it was the cultivators of Maple City on Fallen Leaf Lake that was closest to it, or the cultivators of the Sunset Beauty sect that were thousands of kilometers away, they all felt the tremendous pressure. They could not withstand it at all, so they all retreated into their dwellings or released protective artifacts to forcefully hold on. And in the outer realm battlefield, the world-shaking battle had finally begun. The two top overlords finally fought. Zhang Tian slowly reached his right hand in the air, and with a whoosh, an ancient lotus-shaped Dharma artifact bloomed in his hand. Strands of primal chaos aura swirled around the green lotus leaves and golden lotus flowers. The golden lotus of the Sea of Bitterness? It was cultivated by the royal family of the ruins of immortality in the lost Xianming grotto heaven. In my eyes, it's just a withered leaf. You want to kill me with it? You're making a fool of yourself. God King Xianxia laughed with arrogance in his eyes. He waved his sleeve. A golden thunder mace with flashing golden light and surrounded by lightning was taken out. The lightning showed the images of phoenixes, dragons, qilins, qiongqis, and other fierce beasts. They waved their claws and were extraordinarily powerful. They were all intelligent and contained the power of the great Tao. Golden Thunder Mace. It was a top Tao artifact of the ruins Emperor's palace and contained a great Tao fragment. God King Xianxia had comprehended the two great Tao of lightning and metal. It was easy to use and was 10 times or 100 times more powerful than ordinary Tao artifacts. Withered leaf. Try it. Zhang Tian snorted. The divine disk behind him spun wildly, and the wood elemental and metal elemental laws poured into the green lotus. The lotus leaves and lotuses immediately rumbled and boiled like a sea. They turned into wooden spikes, rolling logs, swords, spears, and halberds that attacked God King Xianxia. These attacks and weapons were all formed from the laws of nature. They were like rain, clouds, and rain, smashing down one after another. Everywhere they passed, the void within 100 miles shook and meteorites shattered and turned into ashes. The remains of the primordial ship were torn apart and countless corpses of the ancient warriors were turned into ashes. Even their armor was shattered. You refined an ornamental plant into a quasi-Tao artifact that contains 2 types of 5 elemental laws. Moreover, the laws are perfect. You can still use them even after leaving the stellar world. It's of an extremely high level. God King Xianxia was startled. Ever since he had appeared, his face had been calm or contemptuous. But now it finally revealed a look of surprise. The array Zhang Tian triggered by waving his hand was something he couldn't do when he was a golden core cultivator or even a nascent soul cultivator. God King Xianxia had carefully read all the information about Zhang Tian collected by the ruins Emperor's Palace and the 100 Moon Academy. He certainly knew that Zhang Tian was powerful. But when he really faced Zhang Tian, he realized that he had underestimated Zhang Tian. The power unleashed by Zhang Tian right now was not something that a nascent soul cultivator from a desolate remote planet could unleash. It wasn't even something a nascent soul cultivator from the ruins of deity could do, which made him feel like he was facing a super overlord from another planet. He didn't mean the solar system but the legendary Big Dipper planet region or the even more mysterious central galaxy. What a shame. No matter how strong you are, you're only a golden core cultivator and a nascent soul cultivator, while I'm a soul formation grand cultivator. Suppressing you is like crushing eggs. God King Xianxia snickered. If Zhang Tian was given 100 years to break through to the soul formation level or even the half soul formation level, God King Xianxia knew that he would be no match for him. But it was a pity. Kong Teichu was still young and he was already facing him. The difference between their levels was too great and he was asking for death. Chapter 1529. Break. Deity Emperor Xianxia groaned and the divine treasure in his body rumbled. A mighty deity inside his body suddenly opened its eyes. The space within 100 miles shook and there seemed to be the sound of the great Tao. The world seemed to have been awakened by the divine God. Suddenly the golden thunder mace was swung out. Rumble. Lightning was generated in the void, formed by the patterns of the great Tao. The lightning was as thick as a dragon and it was surrounded by a golden light beam that was thousands of feet long and contained extremely hard metal Taoist rhymes. It swept across the sky like a pillar. The thunder dragon coiled around the golden light beam and the Taoist rhymes broke the void. Crack, crack. The many visions created by Zhang Tian were shattered under the bombardment of the golden light beam, as if they were made of paper. Bang. With a single strike, Zhang Tian was blasted flying. His body was like a wheel as it rolled through the sky. Everywhere it passed, a few hundred meteorites that were hard like mountains were blasted apart in unison. Zhang Tian only managed to stabilize himself after breaking dozens of giant meteorites and the remains of the ancient chariot. Even so, blood oozed out of the corner of his mouth. Although he had several divine bodies in his body and several of them had reached the state of transcendence, He wasn't a real nascent soul cultivator after all, let alone a soul formation cultivator. Even if he had condensed an extremely powerful Dharma law, he was still far from the great Tao. With the help of several divine bodies and the many laws of nature, they barely managed to withstand the attack of the world-shaking godly emperor. From the point of view of the people by the fallen leaf lake, Jiang Tian directly broke through 100 miles and disappeared from the scene. Senior Tai Chu, Long Xingnan cried with tears in her eyes. The essence qi in her body was boiling and the 9 true dragons of the Dharma laws were roaring crazily. But the shackles of the great Tao immediately suppressed them. Long true essence thorns pierced into her nascent soul and she almost went crazy from the pain. All the true dragons of the Dharma laws were annihilated. Haha, my Dharma artifact is still too close and the monitoring range is too small. Who knew Kong Techu would be so weak that he would be sent 100 miles away? Mo Yang stood with his hands on his waist and laughed at the sky. He was gloating and mocking. He's dead. Even if Kong Techu's entire body was made of golden cores, he would still be crushed by a divine emperor of the divine transformation realm using a bloodline Daoist artifact. Congratulations, Celestial Emperor Hanshi. You've achieved victory in the first battle and eliminated the scourge Kong Techu from the ruins of immortality. You've avenged Prince Chun Yu and the many other fellow Daoists. The world-shaking godly emperor has mastered the great Tao. His divine abilities can shock the heavens and earth. In the future he will definitely dominate the universe and shock the ages. The divine generals laughed maniacally to their heart's content. Some of them even bowed and prayed, flattering him. At this moment, in the boundless extraterritorial battlefield high in the sky, a long howl resounded. Jiang Tian transformed into a resplendent beam of light and charged over. You're pretty good at taking a beating. Divine Emperor Hanshi was taken aback, revealing a look of astonishment. He thought that his attack, which contained the fragment of the Great Path, could at least take away half of Jiang Tian's life. However, it was obvious that he had not seriously injured Jiang Tian. Divine Emperor Hanshi, are you a woman? Or did he not eat any spirit pills at night? He had no strength at all. Come on. His clothes were in tatters, revealing sparkling yet cracked skin. Sparkling divine blood flowed from his body. However, he was still full of viciousness and the 10-foot divine plate behind him was still spinning. The bright light from the divine plate enveloped him, making him look like an unyielding fiend god standing in the sky. People were astonished and couldn't believe it. Even the divine generals were astonished. The reason why Divine Emperor Hanshi was called a divine emperor was that his power had shaken the deity ruins back then. He had rarely been an opponent since he became a cultivator. Besides, the fragments of the Great Path of Gold and the Great Path of Thunder were extremely fierce. When Divine Emperor Hanshi attacked, even if his opponent was a half-soul formation cultivator, he would usually kill them within 3 attacks. At that moment, Jiang Tian, a nascent soul cultivator, was able to resist his attack. That was unbelievable. You're too arrogant. Divine Emperor Hanshi was enraged. His majestic shout seemed to have come from the sky, echoing in a 100-mile radius. Kong Techu, you can talk to me like that when you become a nascent soul cultivator and a soul formation cultivator. You're not qualified yet. He swung the golden thunder sword breaker and attacked Jiang Tian. Countless claps of thunder sounded in the world and the golden energy spread like tides. The lead clouds in tens of thousands of miles shook and pressed down. The vast dome and the dimensional crystal wall were also shaking as if they were about to shatter. Everyone in the world below felt this terrifying pressure. If it wasn't for the fact that they were fighting in the outer realms, it was unknown how many creatures would have died tragically. On the battlefield outside, the energy waves were more than 10 times stronger than below. There were even great paths roaring as if they had been mobilized by that attack. In fact, that was indeed the case. The great paths in this world were resonating and trembling. Endless thunderbolts were shot out from the boundary. Countless battleships turned into liquid steel and pressed down on Jiang Tian. Rumble. Wherever it passed, endless Tao marks were left behind. Huge meteorites that were like mountains were cut apart and crushed. They exploded like fireworks and mushroom clouds rose into the air. It was a shocking scene. The golden energy waves were like tides and the thunderbolts were as thick as dragons. They all contained traces of great paths and attacked together. Swish. Jiang Tian's face was as cold as iron, but he hadn't used the absolute heaven sword yet. Instead he swung the green lotus and golden lotus again. He wanted to consume Divine Emperor Hanxi's blood qi and drag him to the first level of the soul formation realm before killing him with one slash. As the green lotus and golden lotus swung down, the whirling divine trees with elemental law and metal elemental law were infused into it, forming a towering tree and countless golden lotus petals. The towering tree was extremely tough and thick to resist attacks. The golden lotus petals were extremely sharp and were used to attack. Each petal was a mile wide and was like a peerless strange knife. It easily cut through space and flew out. Divine Emperor Hanxi was like a dragon jumping over a golden sea, and Jiang Tian was like a lotus blooming in the endless sky. They both had their strengths and strikes. Rumble. Plang. Plang. Countless Dharma laws clashed with each other. The cold and lonely sky immediately boiled, setting off tornadoes and waves that swept 100 miles away. Sounded like ghosts crying and wolves howling. Even though the outer space was in a vacuum state, there were still hurricanes. Those were caused by dimensional fluctuations, not air currents, so they were even more terrifying. Under the violent impact, a small satellite 100 miles wide exploded and burned for a long time. It shone on the Penglai world below like a sun in the sky. Besides, all kinds of strange phenomena appeared one after another. There were headless fiend gods, six-winged birds, three-headed heavenly hounds. There were even rows of mighty ancient armies fighting with chariots. During the age of Tao damage in the deity ground, the invaders of the Ruins Emperor and the natives of the deity ground had once fought a fierce battle in that asteroid belt. Those images contained powerful Dharma power and were imprinted in the magnetic storm and even the dimension crystal wall. After tens of thousands of years, they had already dimmed and disappeared, but then they were activated by the Dharma power of the two of them. The dim LCD screen was like being electrified, showing the images again. It was a shocking scene. Swish. Under the impact of the Thunder Dragon and the Golden Ocean, the trees couldn't help but collapse. Towering trees couldn't hold on any longer. They wailed and shattered. Under the suppression of the great Tao fragments, even the laws were annihilated, causing a shocking explosion. Endless green fragments of the laws of wood shot out in all directions, pushing out over 100 miles. Even the tougher golden lotuses of Dharma laws couldn't withstand it. They were annihilated by Divine Emperor Hanxi's great Tao thunder and devoured by the golden Tao. However, only 3 petals of the golden lotuses of Dharma laws whizzed through the sky and shot over. Humph. Small Tao. Divine Emperor Hanxi looked disdainful. He waved his sleeve, trying to destroy the golden lotuses of Dharma laws. However, the 3 golden lotuses of laws suddenly shrunk and accelerated 100 times faster, as though they could tear through space. They arrived in an instant and directly tore apart his dragon robe, penetrating the Tao artifact armor lining it. They passed through his extremely tough physical body and hit his divine treasures. Rumble. Crack. Within his body, the divine treasure that was like an immortal palace trembled intensely and rumbled as numerous terrifying cracks actually appeared on it, and they swiftly extended out like a spider web. Oh no! Divine Emperor Hanxi was shocked. Chapter 1530. The god in the godly Emperor Hanxi's divine treasure was like an incarnation. He instantly sensed it. Divine light burst out from his eyes as he roared and punched out, turning the 3 golden lotuses into dust. The deity was closely connected to the divine treasure, just like his shell. He should have been able to repair those cracks by using his Dharma power. However, no matter how hard the deity chanted or cast the swordsman's secret art of the 9 heavenly arts of the Ruins Emperor, the cracks in his divine treasure and body couldn't be repaired. Divine Emperor Hanxi's energy dropped. He was at the 2nd level of the soul formation realm at first. After his body cracked, his divine treasure was damaged and his energy leaked out. He was showing signs of falling to the 1st level. What about Jiang Tian? He broke the dimension and retreated 100 miles away, standing on a giant meteorite. He held the azure lotus in his hand and stared at Divine Emperor Hanxi coldly. He wasn't injured at all. How is that possible? Divine Emperor Hanxi has been a soul formation cultivator for hundreds of years and has shaken the ruins of deity for 1,000 years. How can he be injured? Many immortal generals turned pale with fright. After a long time, they all stepped forward and stared at the image on the huge golden screen. They still couldn't believe what they were seeing. That was a soul formation grand cultivator. That was a deity emperor. There were only 100 soul formation cultivators in the ruins of deity. There hadn't been any soul formation cultivators in the second-level High-Lawn world since the beginning of time. Even the 6 grotto heavens in the ruins of deity might not have soul formation cultivators. Once a soul formation grand cultivator appeared, they would definitely open their doors and invite guests from all over the world to join them. Any soul formation cultivator in the ruins of deity was a divine sect, a grotto heaven and a grand cultivator family. Some could even leave the ruins of deity, travel the universe and establish their own palaces on other barren planets. They would then become deities and live as long as the world. Even the ruins emperor would think highly of them. As for divine emperors, there were only 10 of them in the entire ruins emperor's family. They were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. They practiced the purest cultivation arts, which were compatible with the Grand Tao. They also had to make contributions, illuminate the world and be recognized by the ancestral emperor of the ruins of deity. But such a divine transformation realm cultivator, such a prestigious god king was actually injured by Zhou Xian, a mere nascent soul cultivator. Moreover, the wound couldn't heal even after a long time. This was too unbelievable. Bai Mushui and the other cultivators from the Penglai world were all stunned. They stood there like clay sculptures. Even Long Xingnan couldn't believe it. Her voice trembled as she muttered to herself, forgetting the pain brought about by the shackles. Our Lord is so powerful. It could be said that Zhang Tian's attack had truly shocked everyone. Forming a nascent soul was still a golden core. Even if Zhang Tian could activate the Dharma laws and become a heavenly lord, there was still a huge gap between him and the soul formation level. For example, the Yuanying stage was like a baby that hadn't come out of the womb, and the divinity stage was like a strong young man. If a young man wanted to pinch a baby to death, it would be extremely difficult. The baby couldn't even walk steadily, so how could it shake a young man? In terms of Dharma power and divine powers, a nascent soul cultivator could only control a certain kind of Dharma laws, while a soul formation cultivator had already reached the limit of the nascent soul level, turning into a god and touching the edge of the Grand Tao. The Grand Tao was one of the most powerful forces in the world and the foundation that kept everything in the universe running. The so-called Tao reunion perfected immortals had completely understood and integrated the Grand Tao. Soul formation cultivators had only touched the edge of the Grand Tao, which was only at the star level. They were still far from reaching the universe and could only control some fragments of the Grand Tao. And yet, the Grand Tao was the ultimate essence and sublimation of the Dharma laws. Once a soul formation grand cultivator said something, he could form rules and build a realm. If you weren't at a high enough level, you would never be able to resist the Grand Tao of the world. Not to mention, Divine Emperor Hanshi also had a powerful body nourished by countless heavenly treasures and many armor and Tao artifacts to protect him. Ah, do you know how my lord played? Ghost Wolf laughed smugly, as if he were the one who had seriously injured Divine Emperor Hanshi. He said, "He hit him because my lord has the law of Kunping, which can crack the dimension and is extremely fast. My lord didn't want to fight him head-on. Those broken trees and the law of golden lotuses were all a disguise. Only the 3 golden lotuses have the law of space, so he's the fastest. Haha. Prisoner, don't you dare laugh. You're just a stinky crow. You can't stop cawing." The godly generals were infuriated. They slapped him across the air, shattering his cheekbones and causing his flesh and blood to splatter everywhere. However, Ghost Wolf continued to laugh as if he had gone mad. He opened his eyes wide and shouted at the top of his voice. He shouted, "The law of Kunping keeps breaking the dimension and can't be healed in a short time. Divine Emperor Hanshi will be exhausted to death. He's sinful and will definitely die." Hundreds of disciples of the Mixed Cave sect were killed by him. Arg! Divine Emperor Hanshi and the god in his body let out an earth-shattering roar. Countless meteorites were shattered and the crystal barrier shook as if it were about to crack. "Impossible. You're just an abandoned person from a remote planet. You're only a nascent soul cultivator. How can you hurt me?" Divine Emperor Hanshi roared, full of unwillingness and anger. "Kung Teichu, I'll cut you into pieces in 3 moves. I'll burn your divine soul in the fiend fire for 10,000 years. Then I'll kill your family, friends and partners in front of your divine soul." He was furious and he wasn't as calm as he used to be. Terrifying runes of Daoist rhymes burst out of his body and echoed across the entire battlefield like waves crashing against the shore. Countless meteorites the size of mountains were reduced to dust in an instant. The remains of countless ancient warships were shattered, and the huge skeletons were reduced to ashes. Even the crystal barrier was torn open, and the astral winds of the 9 heavens gushed in. The creatures of this world all hid in their cave abodes and activated all of the formations. Therefore it was unknown how many people died unnatural deaths. "You're shameless," Zhang Tian sneered. "You're just a soul formation cultivator. If you were a top cultivator, I would be scared of you and run 1,000 miles away. Unfortunately, you're not. How can you withstand my 9 types of law flowers when I use my mind to attack?" He looked cold and he glanced at Divine Emperor Xianxia with his immortal will while holding the azure lotus golden lotus in his hand. That was true. Before this, Zhang Tian had always relied on brute force to break through all techniques, relying on his rich magic power and powerful laws to mindlessly and violently smash down. But if he met a powerful enemy, he wouldn't be afraid of soul formation cultivators with his experience and the 9 Dharma laws. Boom! The sky trembled and the group of meteorites shattered. Divine Emperor Xianxia was surrounded by countless lightning bolts, and the golden great Tao rumbled. He held the golden thunder mace in his hand and rushed out of the group of meteorites. At this moment his battle intent shook the 9 heavens and 10 earths and everyone was moved. But Zhang Tian was extremely calm. He didn't even look at the furious Divine Emperor Xianxia. Instead he glanced at Ghost Wolf and said, "Ghost Wolf, you've always asked me what the extreme assassination art is like. I once told you that the extreme assassination art can break the Grand Tao and kill deities. You didn't believe me before, but I'll teach you today." The 30-foot divine disc behind him spun quickly and the Kun Ping True Seal lit up and infused into Zhang Tian's body. Once the laws of the Kun Ping were infused, his entire body changed instantly. A pair of wings grew out of his back and every feather seemed to be able to cut through space. It made him seem like he could control space and he was like a Kun Ping divine bird that could traverse the 3,000 worlds and traverse the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The terrifying energy made Divine Emperor Xianxia stop in his tracks, as if Zhang Tian couldn't catch it, which made him feel uneasy. "Army!" Divine Emperor Xianxia was alarmed as he conjured hand seals and chanted incantations. He used astral steps and with a deep bellow, he cast the army formula of the Ruins Emperor's 9 heavens art. That was a powerful secret art. It was a top secret that only the descendants of the Ruins Emperor could cultivate. Even the disciples of the 100 Moons Academy didn't have the chance to touch it. It was said that it was created by a peerless heavenly lord at the Tao ancestor level. Could control all weapons, be it friend or foe. When refined to the extreme, it could even control all things. The moment he used the heavenly art mystic technique, everything in a 50-kilometer radius trembled. Countless ancient war chariots, battleship remains and rusted Dharma treasures and Tao soldiers seemed to awaken. They emitted resplendent light as they surged towards him like a metallic flood. In a blink of an eye, countless battleship wreckage, Dharma treasures, and weapons gathered in a 5-kilometer radius around him. Although they were scattered in a picturesque manner, there was a certain order to it. Formation. He bellowed again. The heavenly art secret art formation was also known as the group formula. It was a supreme art that used the resources of the world to form runes and array formations. Immediately, halberds, broken swords and battleships lined up in midair, instantly forming a formation. Chapter 1531. This array formation shone brightly and illuminated the sky. Vast waves of dermic powers surged out like thousands of layers of giant waves. A single strand of dermic powers was enough to stop and kill a nascent soul realm cultivator. It was a defensive formation and an offensive formation. Moreover, it was of a very high level. They were both quasi-divine formations. To be able to set up 2 layers of quasi-divine formations in such a short period of time could be said to be world-shaking and peerless. Zhang Tian was very calm. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he waited for him to finish arranging the formation. The third art of the 9 laws of the Kun Ping, crack the heavens. Zhang Tian shouted in a low voice. With a whoosh, Zhang Tian turned into a 10-li-long stream of light and disappeared from where he stood. The huge meteorite under his feet instantly cracked into countless pieces. It was actually directly cut apart by the terrifying spatial crack. And that was only the aftermath of the Kun Peng's Dharma laws. Whoosh! A beautiful arc of light suddenly lit up in the outer realm battlefield. The dimension cracked and the world changed color. It seemed that the sun, moon and stars on the 100-mile battlefield had been cut by Zhang Tian's bright arc. The power of the Kunping breaking the dimensional laws was unimaginable, and not even the two quasi-divine arrays could stop it. Under Zhang Tian's Kunping laws, they were as weak as paper. They were forcefully torn apart, and the countless talisman formations and light instantly dimmed. Those battleships, ancient weapons and Dharma artifacts all exploded and turned back into scrap metal. 3 of them floated in the air. Okay. Divine Emperor Xianxia was shocked. He didn't expect that his 2 quasi-god grade formations would perform another hand seal, the Dao character of the 9 great heavenly arts, allowing him to flee into an alternate dimension and vanish without a trace. But Zhang Tian had already followed him and disappeared almost at the same time. After 3 flicks, the dimension cracked again. Divine Emperor Xianxia abruptly jumped out of the alternate dimension like a rabbit being chased by a wolf, battered and exhausted. The dragon robe on his body had long been torn into shreds, and his armor was completely shattered. His body was covered in countless wounds, and his divine treasures had collapsed. Black smoke billowed, and the flames of the vermilion bird law soared into the sky and melted everything. The law of thunder and lightning exploded from time to time, and even the galaxy crystal sand and the law of thick earth smashed wildly. All in all, it was a mess and extremely miserable. The god in the divine treasures was full of holes and half dead. He staggered and roared as if he were drunk. Indeed, Zhang Tian followed him into the void, continuously displaying the most powerful natural laws, attacking explosively one after another, making it impossible for him to defend himself, suffering a miserable fate. In fact, it would have been better if he hadn't gone into the alternate dimension. He would have been restrained if he had. His movement character art was only an incomplete heaven art. His spatial manipulation technique could not be compared to Zhang Tian's Kunpeng law. It was like a crippled person trying to compete with Usain Bolt in running. Swordsman. Divine Emperor Xianxia's body was bleeding profusely. His bones and tendons were broken, and even the god had been severely injured. At this moment, his eyes were filled with fear as he roared and performed heavenly arts. The swordsman art was a healing secret, one of the 9 great heavenly arts. Any injury, even if it was caused by a great Dao attack, could be healed. He had just condensed his body and didn't even have time to repair his god and divine treasures. The Dao artifacts on his body were mostly shattered. He could clearly sense that he was unable to resist Zhang Tian's several supreme laws, which were attacking him in a frenzy. Look at my Dao artifact. He took out a palm-sized square purple gold shield. This purple gold shield was made of supreme-grade Dao mark purple gold. It was the pride of the divine craftsman hall in the ruins of immortality. It took hundreds of years of hard work from countless formation and rune grandmasters. It was densely packed and inscribed with countless talisman formations. Once it was unleashed, it split into 8 and expanded with the wind to a radius of 10 meters. It blocked all directions and completely enveloped the entire body, seamlessly sealing off all gaps. He used the shield to protect his body and rushed into the distance. Looking down, he should be in the direction of the Tianhuang sect. He wanted to use the World Cave teleportation array there to escape. The 8th law of the Kunping Yin and Yang splitting. Facing this, Zhang Tian's face was still calm. He pointed his finger in the air, forming a round and curved arc, just like the dividing line of the yin-yang tai chi diagram. This point of his contained boundless destructive spatial laws. It was like a fragrant elephant crossing a river, like a true dragon dancing in the sky, and it charged out from an inconceivable angle. It was like the cycle of Tai Chi, and it actually easily slashed apart the violet gold shield. Then, it easily pierced through the divine treasures of Divine Emperor Xianxia and tore a terrible crack on the god. It's terrifying. This ultimate assassination technique interferes with space and follows the heart. It's like a miracle. In the Penglai world, countless overlords trembled and sighed in amazement. They were both afraid and respectful, as if they had seen a god. There was an unprecedented light in Ghost Wolf's gloomy eyes, as if he had seen a peerless beauty in front of him. He stared at Zhang Tian's every move without blinking, trying to remember all the details when he broke open the space. This would give him extreme inspiration in controlling space. He might be able to transcend and reach an unimaginable height. Ah! Divine Emperor Xianxia screamed. This time he fell from the first level of the soul formation realm again, and the fragments of the great Tao in his god all cracked. He roared crazily and his Dharma power surged, but it was to no avail. Zhang Tian used the space assassination Tao, which contained divine-level laws. He had already been severely injured and his god was about to collapse. If he continued to fight, he might not be able to return to his peak in this lifetime. How should I escape? He ran crazily and used the Xing art. He ran 100 miles in one step and rushed toward the crystal wall. Let the divine generals block it. I can still go back. I was too impulsive this time. I shouldn't have gone in alone. He finally calmed down and threw out 18 quasi-doctrine artifacts in a row, trying to stop Zhang Tian from intercepting him. Each doctrine artifact was made by a soul formation grand cultivator and contained the power of a soul formation grand cultivator. It was like a soul formation grand cultivator attacking Zhang Tian 18 times in a row. He believed that as long as he returned to the Hylon world, the fortress there would definitely be able to stop Zhang Tian. Besides, there were 4 or 5 soul formation grand cultivators in that world and they weren't much weaker than him. Kid, you'd better not let me get away. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead. God Emperor Hanshi burned his god blood essence and forcefully broke through the boundary crystal wall, heading straight for Fallen Leaf Lake. Unfortunately, he soon saw something that made his hair stand on end. Zhang Tian was already waiting for him down there. He didn't even see when Zhang Tian broke the barrier and entered that world. There were no space fluctuations at all. Taichu, let me go this time. We can sit down and talk. I can agree to any of your conditions. Divine Emperor Hanshi was dumbfounded. He activated his divine powers to protect his body with golden thunderbolts and tried to beg with his immortal will. Unfortunately, Zhang Tian ignored him. A glint of coldness and mockery flashed in his eyes and he waved his fingers. 9 laws of Kunping. The 9th law. Open the chaos. That was the highest level of derivative law that Zhang Tian had comprehended when he was studying the laws of Kunping. Besides, when he became the god of Hongmeng in his previous life, he had also opened up the universe and separated the chaos, becoming the god of creation like Pangu. So, the laws of space shattering that were derived from primal chaos splitting contained a trace of the aura of the god laws and heaven Tao that gods of creation used to split the primal chaos apart, and it was supreme and peerlessly formidable. Everyone was shocked to see that as Zhang Tian waved his fingers, the dimension seemed to have come alive. Chapter 1532. Right. As Zhang Tian's white fingertips swept across the air, the dimension seemed to have a mind of its own. It was pushed to the sides and was divided into 2 halves. In the middle was the deepest and most empty absolute void. That scene was like the divine artifact in the hands of the supreme heavenly venerate Tao ancestor before the chaos was created. It split the void, divided yin and yang and broke the chaos. Swish. That law was invisible. After Zhang Tian waved his 2 fingers, he retracted his hand calmly without any energy. However, the vast and surging tide of gold qi as well as the bearing lightning dragons and serpents, which carried the traces of the great Tao, suddenly cracked in midair. The incomparably condensed dermic powers instantly dissipated. Just as Hanshi godly emperor's body took a step back, he suddenly froze. A crack slowly appeared on his body, penetrating through his divine treasures, physical body, body armor and dragon robe. Finally, it completely split him in half. The 17th grandson of the Emperor of the Ruins, a second-level soul formation overlord and one of the 10 divine emperors of the ruins of deities, Divine Emperor Hanshi, had died. At the moment of Hanshi Shenhuang's death, Penglai, Hylon, fertile land, ruins of immortals. The great ways of heaven and earth rumbled and trembled. Heaven and earth resonated with each other. Gloomy winds howled in the sky like ghosts crying and wolves howling. Thunder rumbled and heavy rain poured down. It seemed that heaven and earth were angry, crying and crying. The nascent soul had become an extremely powerful god after growing strong and sublimating to the extreme. It also took a fragment of the great Tao and stored it inside, gaining the approval of the great Tao in the world as if it were a child born by the world. In fact, the soul formation level was based on the principle of the formation of Khanate gods to become acquired gods. Once a soul formation cultivator died, it would definitely trigger the connection between heaven and man, which was 100 times more obvious than the death of a nascent soul cultivator. It was as if the world had sensed the death of its son. Of course, it would be sad, angry and uneasy. At this moment, the billions of gods and cultivators of the Penglai world, including the ignorant mortals, naturally felt grief, shock, and fear in their hearts. That was the power of a soul formation cultivator. This was the effect of the death of a divine transformation realm cultivator. At that moment, the 100 Moon Academy, Sky Palace, Ruins, Emperor's Palace, the 6 Grotto Heavens, the many huge cities, the teachers, the Sword God, and the Star Lords, as well as countless experts, all flew out of their doors. They looked in shock at the tiny and dark planet in the sky that was revolving around a slightly larger planet. They had also sensed it, and there was no need for them to use the soul tablet to detect it. They felt the fall of the world shaking. Godly Emperor. I can feel it. The headmaster clutched his chest and showed a pained expression. He sighed and said, "It seems that Divine Emperor Xianxia has fallen. He died for Chun Yu. This Kong Teichu is so vicious." The entire Ruins Emperor's Hall was shaken. Countless members of the imperial family, dukes, and ministers were furious in their hearts. They had sorrowful expressions as they slammed the table and roared furiously, and they seemed as if they were about to swallow someone up. A star that once shone brightly in the ruins of immortality, a star that illuminated the ancient times, dimmed and descended. Could it be that our ruins of immortality is really going to be defeated by this demon? In Sky Palace, Sky River, Star King looked at the falling meteor in the sky. He looked very sad. Beside him, Prince Xiahe was tearing up. In Penglai, the people who had witnessed all this with their own eyes were 10 times more shocked. What? Divine Emperor Xianxia has fallen. He killed him. Seeing this scene, the divine generals of the White Tiger Guards were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe it, and their faces were full of fear as if they had seen a demon. As for Jiang Tian, after killing Divine Emperor Xianxia, he made a hand seal and erased the traces of the great path that had begun to weaken in his storage bag. He then took out the bodies, golden cores, and divine souls of Zhang Qingyang and Swordmaster Ao Tian. Form. Jiang Tian made a hand seal, and the divine souls and golden cores entered their bodies. The two of them opened their eyes as if they had come back from the dead. They looked a little weak and their limbs were stiff. Senior Tai Chu has killed Divine Emperor Xianxia. Congratulations, Senior. The two of them looked confused for a while, then they were delighted. They hurriedly bowed and said gratefully, "Thank you for saving our lives, Senior. This disciple will never forget your great kindness." Jiang Tian didn't say anything. He patted the sky-swallowing demon gourd, and 2 Butian pills and 2 soul recovery pills flew out towards the two of them. "Thank you for the pills, Senior." The moment the two of them saw this pill, they knew that it was of a high level. It wasn't a heavenly pill, but it was at least at the level of Tao pills and true pills. It was priceless. They were so excited that their bodies were trembling. Sword Honorable Ao Tian was even crying. Without saying a word, they immediately swallowed the medicinal pills and flew down towards the falling leaf lake. Then Jiang Tian didn't hesitate at all. He turned the divine disc behind him and used the law of Tao Tai. He swallowed the divine Emperor Xianxia's body, divine treasures and deities before they completely exploded. An ordinary deity's essence, qi, and energy far exceeded that of 1,000 Yuanying deities. Jiang Tian was prepared to devour them and use them to increase his cultivation. He wouldn't even let go of their flesh, blood, qi, and divine treasures. If a moralist saw this, he would probably curse and reprimand Jiang Tian's method of devouring the blood essence and cultivation of others was too cruel and lawless, and it went against the harmony of the heavens. He could be called a devil amongst devils. However, Jiang Tian had always been going against the laws of nature, so he didn't need to follow the will of the world. As far as Jiang Tian was concerned, no matter if it was demon cultivation, immortal cultivation, or devil cultivation, in the end, they were all methods of obtaining and utilizing strength. There was no such thing as good or evil. It all depended on how you used your power. Who were you fighting for? What were you fighting for? What were you fighting for? Besides, the ruins of deity were about to invade. Jiang Tian had no choice. If he showed mercy and pretended not to improve his power, he wouldn't die. It wasn't just a matter of him dying. Earth and the entire solar system's dimensional worlds were going to suffer. Bang! Jiang Tian looked down and flicked his fingers. The 3 blades formed from the law of gung metal crossed a distance of 10,000 miles and spun like invisible heavenly blades. Crack, crack, crack. The shackles on Long Xingnan, Ghost Wolf, and Bai Mushua's bodies were instantly struck. After holding on for 5 seconds, they let out an unwilling cry and finally broke. Kill them. The time array disc flew out with a whoosh. Jiang Tian sat cross-legged in the void with a calm expression like an old monk in meditation. He directly refined the divine treasures and blood essence of the world-shaking divine emperor. Brothers, we had a good fight just now. Let's settle the score. Ghost Wolf smiled and shook his body to break free from the shackles. He reached out his right hand and the void piercer appeared in his hand. He then attacked Demo Yang and the others. Kill. Long Xingnan also leaped out. Her nascent embryo rumbled and her nascent soul roared. 9 true dragons of natural laws rushed forward. A moment later, golden blood spilled all over the ground and the bodies of a few divine generals fell to the ground. Even their bodies, nascent souls and divine souls had been killed by the 2 of them. Seeing this scene, countless people felt their hearts skip a beat. The sect master of the Heavenly Wolf sect immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Jiang Tian, begging him to spare his life. Jade Lady sect, Sunset Beauty sect's old sect leader, Maple City's city lord, and other big shots of this world also came one after another to kowtow to Jiang Tian. Oh my god, this is too scary. He's not going to kill me, is he? Amidst the crowd, Wang Hailing, the young master of Maple City, was already trembling in fear. His soul almost left his body and he almost fainted. He had never thought that the young man he met outside the city would be the famous fiend Kong Teichu and that his so-called maid would be the saintess of the dragon clan, Long Xingnan. And now they had even killed the divine emperor Hanshi and many divine generals. But he, a foundation establishment cultivator, had actually coveted Long Xingnan's beauty. This was a great offense. It was a capital offense. Chapter 1533. However, Jiang Tian didn't argue with him. After he swallowed divine emperor Hanshi's divine treasures and body, Jiang Tian felt the true essence in his body surging. If it turned into some kind of energy, it would immediately push his golden core to the peak stage of the golden core level. At this time he suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, "You're the one who saved me. City lords of the Red Maple City, the Water Cloud City, the Black Sea City and the Broken Blade City, please come forward. I'm here. Divine Emperor of the Taichu sect, please tell us what to do." Su Muzha and the others were startled, but they didn't dare to disobey. They hurried to the lake and knelt on the ground again. They were all city lords of medium and large cities. They ruled over thousands of people and were all powerful golden core perfected cultivators. Their words carried a lot of weight and they were like local emperors. And yet they didn't dare to disobey Jiang Tian. They could only kneel on the ground and tremble like rabbits in front of a wolf. In fact, Jiang Tian was only a nascent soul cultivator and some of the golden core cultivators hadn't even reached the nascent soul level. However, since Jiang Tian had killed Divine Emperor Hanshi, it proved that he was as powerful as a soul formation cultivator. In their eyes, he was the supreme soul formation cultivator and could be called a grand cultivator or a divine lord. The sect masters of the Flying Cloud Valley, the Fiery Phoenix sect, the Liaoyuan sect, the Thunder Shocking sect and the Xianyu Palace, please come forward. Jiang Tian sat cross-legged in the air. His expression was calm as he spoke. "We're here, at your command, senior." Some people still wanted to suck up to him, but some sect masters and city lords couldn't help it anymore. They cried, "Senior Tai, please spare our lives. We pretended to be the Taichu Vanguard Army and committed crimes everywhere. We were forced by the divine generals of the White Tiger Guards. It was their idea to use the Black Stone Association as a platform to collect offerings in the name of protecting cultivators and mortals. We are innocent." That's right. The leaders of those sects and cities were the culprits, planners, and executors who had committed crimes in the name of Jiang Tian. What was even more despicable was that they had done evil with one hand and pretended to do good with the other to make a fortune. You insulted my reputation, destroyed my image, and framed me. Their crimes are punishable by the extermination of their entire family and 9 generations. Jiang Tian scanned the crowd and said calmly, "Some of you were indeed forced by others. I have always been kind and benevolent. Today I will be lenient and only kill you, the main culprits. I will not implicate your sects and families. Do you have anything to say? Are you convinced? We have no objections." The sect masters of the Jade Lady sect and the Sunset Beauty sect, as well as Sword Venerable Ao Tian of the Heaven Baron sect, stayed out of the matter and expressed their support by bowing. Su Muzha and the other city lords and sect masters could only cry in their hearts as endless regret filled their hearts. They never would have thought that Jiang Tian's strength was actually so formidable. Even Divine Sovereign Hanshi was crushed when he came in person. Only the sect master of the Liaoan sect begged, "Senior Tai Chu, please forgive us this time. We were really forced to do this." When an avalanche happens, not a single snowflake is innocent. Jiang Tian remained unmoved and said mockingly, "It seems that you were forced and didn't have a choice, but in fact you still have a choice. Even if you can't stand on the side of justice like Bai Muxia, you can still withdraw and don't associate yourself with evil." Seeing Jiang Tian mention Bai Muxia, everyone looked over enviously and realized that this woman would probably soar into the sky in the future. Bai Muxia was also excited and hot blood surged in her soft chest. She straightened her back and bowed with her fists. "It's true that the ruins of deity coerced us, but as long as we have justice in our hearts, even if we can't speak up for justice, we can at least remain silent. Their actions of slandering Senior Tai Chu are indeed sinister and despicable. They deserve to be killed. Ghost Wolf, go to the Liaoyuan sect and exterminate them. Don't leave any survivors of their sect master's family." Jiang Tian said. "But I know I was wrong. I'll explode my golden core right now to atone for my sins and apologize to the world." The sect master of the Liaoyuan sect almost cried. He had never thought that he would bring about a disaster with just a simple quibble. Unfortunately, it was too late for him to say anything. Once Jiang Tian's words were spoken, how could he take back his words? "Yes, master." Ghost Wolf didn't say anything. He flapped his black feather robe and turned into a black ray that pierced through the sky. He broke through the void and headed for the Prairie Fire sect. "Do you still want to wait for me to do it?" Jiang Tian's expression was calm. His cold gaze swept across the few evil leaders as he asked indifferently. "Senior Tai Chu is fair. I know I deserve to die for my sins." Su Muzha was the first to decide to kill himself. Before he died, he turned around and looked at the disciples of the Su family in Maple City. "Remember, I deserve what I get today. Don't be angry or take revenge. Disband the family immediately and return to the fields." With that, he activated a spell and his golden core exploded. His physical body turned into a bloody mist and a rain of flesh and blood rained down. His divine soul instantly turned into green smoke and ashes. Some of the disciples of the Su family knelt on the ground in fear and some sobbed. The air was filled with despair and sadness. Jiang Tian wanted to laugh in his heart. The Su family did not even have a few decent golden core realm cultivators. How could they be qualified to seek revenge from him? Su Muzha was clearly putting on a show for her to hear. Even though it was pitiful, it was completely unnecessary. After that, the other sect leaders and city lords also self-destructed their golden cores and died by the lake to atone for their sins. Their golden cores were also blown up and there were broken bones and blood everywhere. It was a mess and extremely bloody. Jiang Tian glanced at everyone and said calmly, "From now on, Sword Master Ao Tian will be the lord of this world and he will control the cultivation world. Bai Muxia will be the empress and she will control the mortal world. Do you have any objections?" "We have no objections. We obey your order, Divine Lord." Many golden core perfected cultivators, sect masters and city lords knelt and agreed without hesitation. They didn't dare to disobey at all. Some were emotional. Kong Teichu was really too powerful. The spirit chi in this world was more abundant and there were more spirit veins and blessed lands. There were many sects and large sections. For thousands of years, there had been a lot of fighting and killing among each other, unlike the dragon sect in the Asia world where the world respected the world. However, Jiang Tian had only been here for a few hours and he had already established his authority by killing the divine emperor Hanshi. At this time he had unified this world with a single order, just like an ancient divine emperor. What he said was the supreme decree of the heavens and nobody dared to question it. Some smart cultivators immediately talked to Bai Muxia and Sword Master Ao Tian with their immortal will, congratulating them and sucking up to them, hoping to get some benefits in the future. But there were also a few grand cultivators who thought they were the only one who was sober when everyone else was drunk, so they sneered. Whether it was through the portal array or interstellar ships, the cultivators from the ruins of deities would always have a way to get there and they would soon cause more trouble. Kong Teichu would definitely die. Even though Kang Techu was powerful, he was only a nascent soul cultivator, and the one he killed was only a soul formation cultivator, the Divine Emperor Hanshi. Other than that, there were 9 divine emperors in the ruins of deities, who were as powerful as the Divine Emperor Hanshi. There were also 100 soul formation cultivators, including the Master of the Academy, the Sword God and the Star Lord, who were even more powerful, and the mysterious ancestral emperor of the ruins. With so many peerless overlords attacking together, how many lives did Kang Techu have left? Once Kang Techu died, Bai Muxue and Sword Master Ao Tian would definitely be punished. They would probably become the shortest-lived empress and the lord of the realms and eventually die. These sects and forces that were eager to show their loyalty would not have a good ending. They would all be dealt with. However, they certainly didn't dare to say anything right then. Everything would be decided soon. Chapter 1534. After settling everything, Jiang Tian smiled. Next, I'm going to find the pearly pearl tree and form the wood elemental true seal. Please lead the way. That's my duty. Senior Taichu, don't mention it. Ao Tian's Sword Venerable bowed respectfully. Fairy Muxue, your divination skills are quite good. You have to bring them to greater heights. Jiang Tian smiled. Thank you for your encouragement, Senior Taichu. I'll do my best. Bai Muxue was greatly encouraged and bowed. Then let's go to the Forbidden Land. Fairy Muxue, come with me. I'll teach you some divination skills along the way. Jiang Tian said with a smile. Divination was very useful. In high-level cultivation civilizations, all alchemy, artifact-making, cultivation arts, and even understanding and simulating great Dao were based on divination. They were extremely delicate and subtle. The martial art that Jiang Tian had trained in was the elephant shapeless, heavy sword edgeless, brute force can break all martial arts. It was a rather primitive, simple and violent martial art. However, it did not mean that he was not proficient in higher-level martial arts. Thank you, Senior. Bai Muxue was overjoyed. She vaguely felt that Jiang Tian's cultivation arts, divine powers, and the Dharma laws he understood were even more profound than the Ruins Emperor's inheritance. Otherwise, how could Jiang Tian defeat the strong as the weak and jump ranks to kill world-shaking Divine Emperor? Jiang Tian's cultivation level was obviously lower. Sword Master Ao Tian even wanted to hold a coronation ceremony, but Jiang Tian rejected it without hesitation. There was no need to talk about these superficial things anymore. Raising one's cultivation was the most important thing, and the most important thing was to raise one's cultivation. However, Bai Muxue, tell the other sects about your divination of the wandering case in the ancient deity ground. In Jiang Tian's previous life, he had conquered the starry sky and swept across thousands of miles. He was very proficient in the art of war and did not blindly act recklessly. Ghost Wolf, imprint and copy the images of the various worlds' chi drawing formations for them as well. If I want to change the fate of the Ruins Emperor, I can't do it alone. I need to reduce the number of enemies and increase the number of comrades. I need to turn the Ruins Emperor into a loner. Only then will I be able to destroy him. Yes. Bai Muxue nodded in admiration. She patted her storage bag and many jade scrolls flew to the hands of the Golden Core cultivators, sect masters and city lords. Fellow Daoists, these are my deductions regarding my travels in the ancient celestial land. If there are any mistakes, please correct them and discuss them with me. I understand. Ghost Wolf also took out the golden sphere and unfolded many scenes. He began to imprint and copy them, handing them over to a few important figures in this world. Many great cultivators picked up the table and poured their magic power into it. Pictures and words appeared in the air. When they saw it, they were shocked. When they looked at the chi drawing formations that Ghost Wolf had imprinted on them, they were even more shocked. Their worldview was turned upside down. So, we are the descendants of the natives of the celestial land. The Ruins Emperor killed our ancestors and enslaved us? So, that's right. I'm not an invader. I crossed 4 light years to come here to seek justice from the Ruins Emperor. Jiang Tian smiled. Why do you want to be the Ruins Emperor's slaves? How can you watch as the spirit chi of our world is sucked away and our descendants can't cultivate and become ordinary people? The throne takes turns. Today it's our turn. Let's defeat the Ruins Emperor together and kill all the interstellar immigrants on the South Gate 1 planet. We'll take back the lost land. Shall we also enjoy the endless resources in the ruins of immortality? As long as you're willing to work for me, I won't mistreat you. You can be a city lord or sect master. Besides, there's also reform. The cultivation arts that you practice come from the remnants of the ancient celestial land. Zhang Tian scanned everyone and smiled. But after more than 4 light years of interstellar travel, the world is different. Your cultivation method is not that compatible with the nomological Great Tao. Today, take out your sect's ultimate techniques. Whether it's alchemy, array formation, close combat, or Dharma idol laws, I'll help you refine them. More than half of the top overlords of the Penglai world had gathered at the Fallen Leaf Lake. If Zhang Tian had told them before that day, those arrogant, peerless cultivators would have scoffed at him. Who do you think you are? Do you think I'll give you my sect's secret arts just because you want them? Who do you think you are? What right do you have to modify our ancestral sect's secret arts? After all, the sect's secret arts were the foundation of a sect. It was like a patented formula on Earth. Who would show it to others so easily? It was even more impossible for others to modify the cultivation arts. But now, Zhang Tian had defeated Divine Emperor Hanxi and killed many golden core cultivators in this world. Especially that move just now, the 9th derived law of the Kun Ping, which could easily cut through a godlike world-shaking Divine Emperor, was simply amazing. He wanted everyone to believe that not only was Zhang Tian powerful, but his cultivation arts and divine powers were also at a high level, comparable to the real legendary sacred arts and deity arts. Once Zhang Tian said that, many people started to become restless. After all, Zhang Tian had reached the top at such a young age. The elixirs, arrays, divine powers, dharma laws and dharma laws he had mastered must be earth-shattering. Even a little of it would be enough to satisfy those big shots. Besides, many of them didn't hold a grudge against Zhang Tian. If they could take this opportunity to befriend this traitor who had the potential to overthrow the ruins of deity, it would be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. What? Senior Tai Chu is willing to modify our cultivation arts? The sect master of the Xian sect exclaimed in disbelief. She was also one of the people who knew about the ancient history, but she didn't want to show up in public like by Wuxia. Legend had it that before the deity ground wandered across the universe, nascent soul cultivators were as common as rain. Soul formation cultivators were as common as clouds, and deities and perfected immortals roamed the world. They weren't any weaker than the descendants of the Ruins Emperor. The reason why the ancient cultivators of the deity ground were defeated by the Ruins Emperor was that they had migrated far away, which led to a drastic change in nature. They had entered an era of Tao damage, and their cultivation arts couldn't even use 1/10 of their original power. And once Zhang Tian modified the cultivation technique to be suitable for this world, their cultivation would increase 10-fold, no 100-fold. That's right. Since you're willing to follow me on the battlefield and kill our enemies, I won't mistreat you. Zhang Tian said calmly. Thank you for your kindness, Divine Lord Tai Chu. The absolute beginning Divine Lord is broad-minded. He has the majestic aura of embracing the world and swallowing the sun and moon. As expected of a Divine Lord, many golden core perfected cultivators, city lords and sect masters were astonished. They kowtowed and couldn't control themselves. At that moment, everyone looked at Zhang Tian in a different way. He had turned from a fiend to their savior and from an evil enemy to their leader. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. They slapped their storage bags and jade scrolls flew to Zhang Tian one after another. After Zhang Tian received them, he scanned them with his spirit consciousness and modified them on the spot. None of the cultivation arts took more than 15 minutes. However, once those cultivation arts were modified by Zhang Tian, they were immediately transformed into something magical. They were refined to their limits and were flawless, compatible with the Great Tao laws. After receiving the modified cultivation arts, the old sect master of the Xian sect immediately sat in the air and circulated her cultivation arts silently. 15 minutes later, she actually shattered her core and formed a nascent soul, undergoing the nascent soul thunder tribulation on the spot and successfully advancing to the nascent soul realm. Godly. That's right. The old sect master of the Xian sect was stuck at the nascent soul realm for 500 years and couldn't advance any further. However, after the Divine Lord Tai Chu modified her cultivation arts, she immediately ascended to the Heavenly Lord realm. The Divine Lord Tai Chu is truly a god. All the golden core perfected cultivators present were stunned and couldn't believe it. They worshipped Zhang Tian as if he were a god. Meanwhile, Jiang Tian spent half a night and finally finished modifying all the cultivation arts when the sun rose and the light of the 2 stars of the southern gate shone on them. Everyone kowtowed 3 times and 9 times before leaving gratefully. In fact, the impact of this battle had only just spread. All kinds of news were sent out and caused a huge uproar, shocking everyone. A powerful divine emperor had died in this world. That kind of impact was extremely terrifying. Apart from Sword Master Ao Tian, there were no other nascent soul cultivators in this place. The most powerful one was only a golden core cultivator and was still 2 miles away from the soul formation level. They looked at Divine Emperor Hanshi like how ordinary people looked at Buddha. How could they not be shocked when he was killed by Jiang Tian? Meanwhile, Jiang Tian led everyone to the forbidden area of the Pearl Tree. The forbidden area of the Steel Forest in the 10,000 Mountains. Sword Master Ao Tian had spent a lot of effort to study this forbidden area. He explained, legend has it that this was the training ground of the ancient heavenly courts. The pearl tree was in the middle and it emitted spirit chi to nourish and cultivate them. That divine tree is extremely huge. It's 1,000 feet tall and its spirit chi radiates 100-mile radius. However, there are powerful restrictions and it's difficult to open it. Chapter 1535. That's right. I've tried to deduce the ancient restrictive spells in this forbidden land, but I couldn't find a way to open it. Bai Mushua's pretty face was filled with shock. Besides, there are a lot of monsters there. They've been nourished by the spirit chi and have reached the golden core level or even the nascent soul level. Indeed, it should be a soul formation level restrictive spell. I've tried to break it with dozens of golden core cultivators, but we didn't succeed. Sword Master Outyan sighed. I entered it by accident. The restrictive spells are broken, but they're not stable. They're changing all the time. Besides, I was only at the periphery. I picked up a leaf of the pearl tree that was brought to the edge by the wind or a bird. There are even more dangerous things inside. I don't dare to go any further. It's easy. I'll break it with my sword. Jiang Tian was calm. If he couldn't break it in a short time, he could do it with the heaven-severing sword. The world of Penglai was vast, boundless and full of vitality. Mountain peaks stood in great numbers, verdant and lush. Towering trees that were hundreds of meters tall covered the sky and the sun. Vines climbed up the cliffs and the fragrance of orchids wafted through the air. Spiritual herbs swayed gently, and they were shrouded by spiritual energy that was like clouds and mist. Giant Chilan beasts were lying lazily on the cliffs, basking in the sun. Their saliva flowed into a stream. All kinds of beasts were running around and fighting. High up in the sky, spiritual birds and vicious beasts flapped their wings and flew high up in the sky. They whistled and cried, adding a sense of savagery to the atmosphere. An iron-feathered giant falcon swooped down, and when it rushed up again, its claws had already grabbed a 100-meter-long giant python. This was an ancient planet that was very suitable for cultivation. It used to be a famous deity island in the ancient times and had given birth to many grand cultivators. If the deity ground hadn't wandered around the universe, the nascent soul level wouldn't have been the limit of the cultivators in this world. In hundreds of years, there might even be 1 or 2 soul formation grand cultivators. The local conditions and customs here were different and unbalanced, but it gave people a colorful feeling. There were golden core sects that stood in the clouds at the peak of a mountain. Their buildings stretched as far as the eye could see, as if they were immortal palaces. The mountain protection array formation emitted a dazzling light. Their disciples and cultivators stepped on flying swords and even rode on flying boats to and fro in the clouds. There were also mortal cities. Although they were guarded by cultivators, most of them were mortals. The roads were crisscrossed and commerce flourished. It was bustling with activity. At this time, the major sects and cities were spreading the news of their defection and the truth of the wandering of the ancient immortal land. Kong Techu had never invaded and had been framed. The crisis had been resolved and every city and town was recovering. There were also primitive tribes that were hidden in the mountains, occupying strategic locations. They used rough stones and wood to build towers, and piled up a lot of rolling logs and boulders in all directions around the village. These tribes wore clothes made of beast skin and used simple pottery and stone tools. They ate raw meat and drank blood, but they were tall and strong. They could fight with savage beasts barehanded. They lived a life far away from the secular world and stood aloof from worldly affairs. Whoa! They are eating jackdaw meat. It was so fragrant. Let's go eat. Suddenly, Zhang Qingyang excitedly pointed at a village on a primitive mountain as they passed by a stone village. Originally, exploring the forbidden area of the stone tablet was very dangerous. Sword Venerable Ao Tian didn't let him come, so he couldn't protect himself. However, he insisted on following. This brat was extremely crafty, knowing that following Jiang Tian, even if it was just for a few days, would be a great opportunity. Just by listening to Jiang Tian casually speak a few sentences, those were all profound words of the great Tao, greatly increasing his own strength. Jiang Tian didn't stop him. His foundation and character were good. If Penglai world could be protected, he should be the realm master. Of course, he would be nurtured and trained. Zhang Qingyang had lived for 100 years, but he still had the temperament of a young man. Perhaps it was because he had spent more than 90% of his life in seclusion and rarely left the sect, so he was very happy to see the bizarre world. I don't care if you eat or not, I'm not eating. Ghost Wolf was speechless. He had the dark crow bloodline. Although it was a rare demon bloodline, it was also a distant relative of the jackdaw. To him, eating jackdaw meat was like eating monkey meat. It was very cruel and unacceptable. Jiang Tian looked down and saw that the sun was high in the sky. The entire village was full of vitality and tranquility. Many children were running on the ground, and the old people were bathed in the sunlight and looked kindly. Every one of them was a tall and muscular man with bare arms and chests. Almost every one of them was dragging a huge ferocious beast, returning from a rewarding journey. The biggest one was a jackdaw as big as a calf. They're back. Father and the others are back. Oh my God, there's such a big harvest. It's a harvest day. A group of women and children who had been waiting at the entrance of the village for a long time cheered. The uneasiness and fear in their hearts disappeared as they shouted loudly. They ran up and hugged their men and fathers passionately. There were even young couples who kissed wildly. They were very open and unrestrained, but no one cared. It was full of a natural and sincere wilderness. They seemed to be easily satisfied. As long as there was food and the company of family, it was enough. The entire village was overjoyed. They plucked the huge jackdaw's feathers and skin, washed it clean, and lit a bonfire. They used 2 big trees as barbecues and prepared to share the food. Sai, this is the most primitive and simple love for a wife and family. It's so touching. Jiang Tian couldn't help but be a little dazed. He stopped in his tracks and looked at them with reddened eyes. He was moved and revealed a kind smile. Everyone stopped in their tracks and then looked at Jiang Tian with shock and surprise. They couldn't believe it. Jiang Tian had the strength of a divine lord. He was an unparalleled hero. He was bloody and cold like a god. Even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, his expression wouldn't change. He killed 100,000 people in one strike and stained the sky and earth with blood. His heart was as calm as a lake. When had they ever seen Jiang Tian have such a benevolent expression? But they didn't know. At this time, Jiang Tian thought of the reactions of Zhao Xueqing, his grandfather, his parents, and many disciples every time he returned from a bloody battle. The orbit and rotation of the stars here are completely different from that on Earth. One day is not equal to one day on Earth. But I used the method of constant decay of the magic artifact to calculate that I have been away from Earth for 2 years. Jiang Tian looked at the scene in the village without blinking. His heart was soft and his thoughts surged like a tide. I wonder if Jiang Beibei, that brat, can walk now? Is Qing'er okay? To what extent has the recovery of spirit qi in the earth reached? Jiang Tian also saw a little girl of 2 or 3 years old with hair tied up in the sky. She was wearing an animal skin tutu. She was very strong and could walk unsteadily. She crouched in front of an injured strong man and carefully looked at the wound that he had been scratched by a demon beast. She was silent, but tears were dripping down to the ground. She seemed to be very concerned and distressed. Next to her, her big and strong mother was applying herbs to her father. The strong man touched the child's little head. Although his face was pale, he still laughed in a muffled voice. Don't cry. It's okay. Dad is very strong. One day I will unfortunately die in battle in this world. Beibei, don't blame Dad, because I can't escape. Jiang Tian looked in the direction of Earth with tears in his eyes. It was daytime. Under the light of the Alpha Centauri, it was impossible to see the blue planet that was as small as a speck of dust. But 10,000 years passed in a glance. His gaze seemed to penetrate the tears, through the past and the present life, through the distance of 40,000 light-years. He saw his daughter's wrinkled little face when she was born. He was in a trance for a moment. They saw that Zhang Tian's tears were coming out. Everyone suddenly understood that Zhang Tian missed his homeland and family. They could not help but sigh with mixed feelings. Especially by Wuxia. Tears were flowing down her cheeks, but she did not say a word. No one disturbed him. In the vast and dangerous universe and the deep cosmos, a golden core cultivator could be said to be as insignificant as an ant. He could be torn to smithereens by the spatial fragments and storms that invaded the world cave at any time. Furthermore, Zhang Tian's homeland was just a barren land. His cultivation level was not high and he was facing the powerful and mysterious Ruins Emperor, as well as a world that had been completely conquered and enslaved by him. As for Zhang Tian, for the safety of his homeland he did not hesitate to venture deep into it alone. He traversed several worlds and traveled a distance of 4 light-years just to wage war on the Ruins Emperor. He endured so much loneliness and took on so many terrifying dangers. It's a cultivator. It can't be one of those bandits, right? No, it doesn't look like it. The bandits are all very fierce. He must be craving meat. The villagers saw Zhang Tian and company fly past. One of the white-robed cultivators even stared at them for a long time. They could not help but be surprised. They stopped what they were doing and discussed among themselves. Under the instructions of the adults, the children ran into a stone house. Foreigners passing by, according to the rules of the heavenly village, guests passing by can share the food on the harvest day. Come on down. Following that, a thin old man in an animal hide robe walked out. He was holding a snow-white crystalline animal bone crutch. He sized up Zhang Tian and company and said with a friendly smile. Chapter 1536. Zhang Tian regained his composure. His eyes became clear and sharp as he asked, Ghost Wolf, how long will it take to reach the Steel Forest? My lord, we have already entered the border of the 10,000 mountains. At our current speed it will take us a day. Ao Tian Sword Venerable said respectfully. Half a day doesn't matter. Zhang Tian nodded slightly and looked at the pitiful 2-year-old child. He smiled and said, Deference is no substitute for obedience. Thank you for your invitation, old master. Then he led the group into the village. It is our honor to have you here. The villagers of Heavenly Village were extremely enthusiastic. The village chief invited the guests into the stone house to boil water and chop firewood. He also ordered a pai xiu and a saber-toothed tiger to be peeled for Zhang Tian and the others. They were all delicious dishes. The hunters in the village accompanied Zhang Tian and the others to chat. Children, alligators, iron-boned dogs, and other domestic animals were gathered in the village. From time to time they would poke their heads out and look around. The women were jubilant and lively. The village was so primitive that it was beyond imagination. The houses were all made of stone and wood. Even the axes were made of stone. There were almost no metal objects. There were only a few iron knives and spears used for hunting. Other than food, all the families had nothing. Zhang Tian had the same feeling as when he entered the longevity village of Haifika's lake back on Earth. However, when Zhang Tian scanned with his divine sense, he noticed that there were a few weapons in the depths of the house. They were very old but still sharp. The key was that there were ancient words on them that said, "Made by heavenly workers." Zhang Tian was slightly shocked. If he was not mistaken, they should be the descendants of the ancient heavenly court. No wonder they were called the Heavenly Village. A few nimble women and girls poured tea in ceramic cups and served it respectfully. The tea here was very strange. It was collected from the leaves and petals of some kind of spiritual medicine and dried fruit slices. It was very similar to fruit tea on Earth. The village chief smiled and said, "You came from the outside. I heard that the outside world has changed. The Emperor Xianxia of the Ruins of Immortality was killed by a bandit called Kong Teichu. Is that true?" Indeed. Zhang Tian maintained his composure. This place has changed drastically. It is no longer under the jurisdiction of the Ruins Emperor. Why does Old Master care about this? I heard that Kong Teichu is a native of the deity ground. He even came from the distant solar system? The village leader didn't answer. Instead, he asked another question. That's right. Esteemed guest, please excuse me for a moment. The village chief's expression was slightly solemn. He walked out of the door and said a few words that Zhang Tian and the rest couldn't understand. Immediately, the whole village was in jubilation. The men raised their arms and cheered loudly. Many women and young girls even shed tears. Jiang Tian walked out of the door and said with a smile, "Mr. Village Chief, can I take a look around the village?" "Esteemed guest, please help yourself." Following that, the village chief led all the male villagers and carried a few ferocious beasts to a huge stone platform halfway up the mountain. They kowtowed 3 times and 9 times to a grave. It was a solemn ceremony. Many people shed tears. In front of the grave knelt a huge corpse that was wrapped in iron wires and vines. Even after countless years of decay, there was still a faint fluctuation of dermic powers. A baleful aura emanated from it, indicating that it belonged to the bloodline of the ruins emperor. Bright red beast blood stained the huge stone platform and flowed along the engravings on the stone surface. It was a brilliant red. Together with the thick fur of the behemoth, its scales that shimmered with cold light and its ferocious horns, it was a shocking sight. There was a tragic, desolate aura that surged over. The charred grave was as silent as before. It didn't react at all, as though it had never used any offerings. However, many villagers knew that it had a spirit. Under the village chief's arrangement, a few burly men threw out an ancient stone tablet from a pit. On it were written in very ancient and profound words, "Tomb of perfected Lord Zhao Ziming, the hero who resisted the South Gate's 1 star." They solemnly placed it in front of the grave. The village chief carried a bucket of water forward and carefully wiped the soil off the tombstone. "Distant ancestor, Divine Emperor Xianxia is dead. Your tombstone can finally be erected openly. Perhaps it won't be long before the ruins emperor is killed as well. Let us look forward to it together." The village chief leaned on his walking stick. With the support of 2 children, he was still trembling with excitement, as though he was on the brink of collapse. There were still many young men, women, and children left in the village. They were slicing the beasts with silver knives, skinning and scraping the bones. From time to time there would be clanging sounds and sparks. The behemoth's bones were shockingly hard and difficult to cut. Long Xingnan, Zhang Qingyang, and even Bai Muxue went to help in high spirits. They conjured their cultivation techniques and condensed their quintessential essence into sabers that sliced through everything. It made the children cheer. Awesome. They are the legendary cultivators that can become immortals. The children revered them greatly as their eyes revealed their desire. Someone had already prepared a huge jar made of clay to collect the blood essence that was preserved in the special parts of the beasts' bodies. To them it was an excellent blood tonic that was extremely rare. "Uncle Ghost Wolf, have a bite." Zhang Qingyang broke off a section of the jackdaw's wing and began munching on it. "You want me to eat my distant relative? Zhang Qingyang, you little bastard, you sure are naughty. Are you asking for a beating?" Ghost Wolf looked at the jackdaw meat that was sizzling with oil. He had a pained expression as he shouted anxiously, "It's really fragrant. It's a ferocious beast that often flies. Its meat is very elastic. Furthermore, it can consume spirit herbs and spirit herbs. It's very nutritious." Zhang Qingyang's saliva splattered as he ate to his heart's content. "Proud heaven, why don't you discipline your disciple? Be careful that I don't beat him up." Ghost Wolf gritted his teeth as he shouted. 2 glistening droplets of saliva accidentally flowed out as he sucked them in. "Ha, Uncle Ghost Wolf, you're obviously greedy." Zhang Qingyang was overjoyed. "Uncle Ghost Wolf, don't force yourself." "Ghost Wolf, why do you have to make things difficult for yourself? You have to admit that you're greedy." Long Xingnan also laughed. Even Sword Venerable Ao Tian was amused. Bai Muxue also revealed a smile. "I'm drooling because of the saber-toothed tiger meat." Ghost Wolf refused to admit and turned his gaze to the side. He was indeed tempted just now. The jackdaw meat was too fragrant. It was filled with local spices, oil, and honey. Furthermore, the people of the heavenly village were very good at barbecuing. The meat was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. This was a rare opportunity for Jiang Tian and the others to relax. After a series of battles, they were surrounded by dangers. Their nerves were stretched taut and no one could withstand it. At this moment they temporarily forgot about fighting and killing. They became mortals, experiencing the mortal world and relaxing their bodies and minds. The 2-year-old girl wearing a tutu sat in the corner with her father. She looked worriedly at her father's bleeding wound. "Father, how long will it take for you to get better?" She was still a little stuttering, but her body was very strong. Her little face was filled with nervousness and worry. Crystal clear tears were swirling in her eyes. This was the inheritance of this clan. Their bloodline was special and they could speak and walk at a very early age. Since ancient times their clan had trained their bodies. However, they couldn't master any spells. Basically, they were all experts in close combat. Father will be able to get up in 3 months. I'll let you ride a horse. The man's face was very pale. He was enduring severe pain, but he still smiled lovingly. He didn't want his daughter to worry. Beside him, the man's wife turned around and cried silently. The man was bitten by the saber-toothed tiger. Venom was left on his bones and wounds. It was difficult to heal. Even if he recovered, he wouldn't be able to walk again. However, she couldn't bear to tell her daughter and make her sad. The hunters in the village would be injured or even killed by the savage beasts every once in a while. Their lives were very difficult. Such a harvest was accompanied by a painful death. There's no need for 3 months. At this moment, Zhang Tian walked over lazily. He took out a bottle of pills and said with a smile, 3 hours is enough. Thank you for the pills, Immortal. The man and his wife hurriedly took the pills and knelt down to thank him. They were so excited that their bodies were trembling. Their faces were full of gratitude. They knew that Zhang Tian and the others were cultivators and could help them. However, they also heard that cultivators were very arrogant. They viewed human lives as nothing and treated pills as treasures. They would definitely not help them. Therefore, they didn't open their mouths to beg so as not to make things difficult for the guests. However, they didn't expect that Zhang Tian would give them pills. Chapter 1537. 3 incense sticks? Is it really that amazing? The little girl looked at Zhang Tian in disbelief. Her clear eyes flickered. Yes. If I can do it, let me hold you. Zhang Tian said with a smile. This girl reminded him of his daughter. I don't want to be held. I could walk when I was 1. I want to fight monsters like my father. The little girl lifted her nose with great ambition. She might be an excellent huntress in the future, an iron heroine. Then I won't give your father any pills. Zhang Tian said with a serious face. The little girl was so scared that her eyes were filled with tears and she almost cried. The man and his wife knew that Zhang Tian was joking. They smiled and said, just let me hold you. Don't be shy. All right. I'll do it. The little girl felt wronged. She swore to be a huntress in the future. She was already 2 years old, not a 1-year-old kid. How could she let him hold her? Zhang Tian immediately asked the man to swallow the pills and used his cultivation art to help him refine them. He guided the pills to his wounds and broken bones, dissolving the toxins left by the saber-toothed tiger. Dissolving such natural toxins was a piece of cake for Zhang Tian. Zhang Tian chatted with the man as he did that. He learned that his name was Luo Xin, the grandson of Luo Shou, the village leader. He used to be the most powerful hunter in the village. His body was strong enough to fight with golden core monsters. His youngest daughter was called Luo Fu, which meant that one day she would be able to recover the land and take back the ruins of deity. However, that was just a dream for them. They were mortals in the age of Dao damage and their blood was sealed. After 10,000 years they were still mortals and couldn't cultivate. They could only eat the flesh of monsters and bathe in blood to strengthen their bodies. He heaved a sigh and wished that he could go to the ruins of deity to fight. Zhang Tian thought to himself. He planned to leave some body-tempering arts for them to improve their power. With hard work they could become melee masters in 10 years and be able to fight with nascent soul cultivators. In fact, close combat was a cultivation path that was on par with law cultivation in the universe. They didn't condense vital essence, nor did they cultivate dharma laws. They only focused on strengthening their physical bodies. However, in the long history of the Central Galaxy, many powerful figures had been born. There had even been a few immortal emperors. It was just that the progress of body cultivation was slow and not many people understood it. In fact, in less than half an incense stick's worth of time, Luo Sen's broken leg had already recovered. He could run as if he was flying. Everyone was alarmed and came to take a look. Lawson removed the branches and linen that were holding him in place. His wound had recovered completely. Zhang Tian was naturally greeted with a wave of praise and gratitude. They regarded him as an immortal and a god. Thank you, Uncle Zhang. Little Luo Fu excitedly threw himself into Zhang Tian's arms and kissed Zhang Tian's face several times, leaving behind a lot of saliva. Haha, I'll leave you another bottle of these pills. If you're injured, just eat a little. As long as you don't die, you can be saved. Jiang Tian hugged her tiny body and felt warmth in his heart. Perhaps it was the same feeling when hugging a daughter. He was overjoyed and was especially generous. He left behind a huge bottle of healing pills, enough for them to eat for 8 to 10 years. Everyone was overjoyed. Finally, village chief Luo Shou finished his ritual. The mourners heaved a sigh of relief as joyful smiles surfaced on their faces once again. A few burly men began moving the corpses of the ferocious beasts, preparing to bleed and cut them up. There were even some mischievous children who went forward and spat at the kneeling corpses and kicked them fiercely. They were extremely valiant. Jiang Tian had nothing to do, so he walked over and asked curiously, "Who is this Xiao Ziming?" The village chief was known as Old Shou. It's a long story. 10,000 years ago, during the era of Dao damage, the cultivators of the South Gate One Star invaded the Immortal Land. They first attacked the Immortal Land before attacking Hylon and finally breaching Broken Blade Pass. The million-strong army of our Penglai world was defeated. The Ruins Emperor sent Brother Mingchuan to guard the people of the 300 cities in this world. The natives of the Immortal Land were all fierce men who were unwilling to be slaves. Zhao Ziming, a golden core cultivator from Wanren Mountain, gathered his troops and destroyed 18 enemy cities in one night, robbing hundreds of crystal warships. From then on, he raised his flag and swore to rebel against the Ruins Emperor and take back his homeland. He even met the Ao Emperor. The old man's face was filled with emotions as if countless old stories were surging in his mind. Jiang Tian later learned that the so-called Broken Blade Pass was the meteorite belt where he and Divine Emperor Hanshi had fought. During the era of Dao damage, to resist the invasion of the South Gate One Star's experts, huge floating cities and fortresses were built there. Countless cultivators were stationed there, densely packed with space warships and flying ships. They had held on for hundreds of years. Countless galactic battles had taken place there. Blood dyed the vast starry sky red. Corpses were densely packed and it was extremely bloody. Countless broken weapons and artifacts floated in the air, densely packed. Therefore, during the era of Dao damage, it was called Broken Blade City or Broken Blade Fortress. Jiang Tian was filled with respect when he heard that. He took out 3 incense sticks, lit them and stabbed them into the ground under the grave. Then he bowed 3 times respectfully. "He's your distant ancestor?" Jiang Tian asked. "Speaking of which, he's not. My distant ancestor was a hunter in this place. He hit it off with him at first sight and became his subordinate," the old man said. "Later, my distant ancestor and Zhao Ziming perished. Senior Zhao had no children. Therefore, the mission of guarding his grave has been passed down from generation to generation in our race." Just as he was about to open his mouth, little Luofu's shout came from the direction of the village. "Great-grandpa Uncle Jiang, it's time for dinner. Sco. We'll talk about perfected Lord Zhao's story later." The old man brought Jiang Tian back to the village. Little Luofu held his great-grandpa's hand and immediately gave Jiang Tian pointers. He told him about Jiang Tian's gift of pills and Luo Sen's recovery. Luo Shou's face was full of joy. He was very grateful and bowed repeatedly to Jiang Tian to express his gratitude. He didn't expect Jiang Tian to be so generous. The banquet had already been set up. The crude wooden table was placed in the small square in the center of the village. Half of a saber-toothed tiger was placed over the bonfire. The tiger's skin had already been peeled off, and a layer of wild honey was brushed on its skin. It was roasted with wood from a fruit tree and it was golden brown and fragrant. There were also wild rabbits and wild pheasants. The villagers had brewed their own grain wine. The simple men of the heavenly village smiled and invited the cultivators and distinguished guests to take a seat. "Kid, eat more pai xiu meat. Eat more to grow strength. This is a rare and precious meat. Brat, this is saber-toothed tiger meat. With more supplements, your fists will be as hard as iron. Don't eat that useless wild boar meat. Immortal Jiang, please drink more grain wine. Although it's crude, it's good that we brewed it ourselves. It's delicious." Everyone gathered together in a lively atmosphere. They drank large amounts of millet wine and chopped large chunks of saber-toothed tiger meat into strips. They grabbed them with their hands and directly gnawed on them. They ate until their mouths were full of oil and it was full of a wild taste. There was no need to mention that refreshing feeling. Jiang Tian suddenly looked at the sky outside the door and said leisurely, "Village leader Luo, do you have any enemies in the heavenly village?" In the eyes of the ruins of immortality, the Luo family of the heavenly village is just a remnant of the deity ground. They once hunted us for 1,000 years. Luo Shou sighed bitterly. We used to be a big family with tens of thousands of people, but now there are only so many of us left. However, later we hid in the mountains and stayed away from the world. The divine soldiers and divine generals of the ruins of immortality also gave up on hunting us. It's been peaceful over the past few hundred years. It's not the divine soldiers and divine generals of the ruins of immortality. But there are strong enemies. Judging from their tools, they should be a group of grave diggers. Jiang Tian smiled and said, "They're from the Ying family." Luo Shou was shocked and remembered something. The Ying family of the great bandits. They're despicable and shameless. A group of pangolins and rats. They dig holes all day long and dig the graves of other people's ancestors. They're heartless. It's not the first time they've coveted perfected cultivator Zhao's grave. Many of our ancestors were injured by them. We've taken perfected cultivator Zhao's body 3 times, but they still came after us. They've gone too far. Let's fight them. Luo Xin and the others were enraged. They slammed the table and shouted. Many men and even women and children rushed into the stone houses and picked up the weapons hidden in the dark. They looked at the sky and roared, ready to fight to the death with the enemy. They were fierce and hot-blooded. They were going to use their bodies to guard the grave of perfected cultivator Zhao Ziming. He was a hero and they felt that guarding the grave was their mission. They weren't afraid even if they were killed by the great bandits. What a luxurious lineup. There are also a few nascent soul heavenly lords. Jiang Tian also held Luo Fu's hand and walked out of the door with Luo Shou. They stood in the open space in the village with a calm face. Chapter 1538. The Great Koing Family? I think I've heard you mention it before. Jiang Tian seemed to have heard of the family before, but he did not have a deep impression of it. He could not help but glance at Long Xingnan and Sword Venerable Ao Tian. Apart from the heavenly courts, the mortal world and hell, there are 7 great co-families in the various worlds of the ruins of immortality that resist the ruins emperor. They are quite a powerful faction. Long Xingnan revealed a solemn expression as she introduced them. Their origins are unknown, but their cultivation levels are very powerful. They control the heritage of the ancient heavenly courts. Some of the great co-families even have soul formation experts presiding over them. They are at odds with the ruins emperor and the various heavenly sects and family clans. They occupy their territories and pillage everywhere. They are extremely ferocious. After Long Xingnan's introduction, Jiang Tian had a rough understanding. The 3 great assassin dynasties were cunning foxes. They loved ambushing and assassinating. As for the great co-families, they were a pack of hungry wolves and ferocious tigers. They occupied forbidden lands and set up formations. Every great co controlled tens of thousands of cultivators. They raised their flags and fought with their strength. However, unlike the 3 great assassin dynasties that only targeted the ruins emperor's faction, they bullied the weak with their strength. No matter who one supported or opposed, as long as one had natural treasures, one could be targeted by them and face annihilation. Jiang Tian's expression was calm, but he was somewhat tempted. If these forces were used, they could be a powerful aid. At the very least, they could disrupt the ruins emperor's deployment. Your Excellency Xing, it's not that simple. Ghost Wolf's expression was solemn as he chewed on the jackdaw meat. Actually, with their strength, they are still incomparable to the regular armies of the ruins of immortality's 9 guards. There's a huge gap. However, they have not been wiped out for thousands of years. There's a reason for this. I heard that they seem to control some ancient world-whole teleportation arrays that even the ruins of immortality do not know about. They can easily traverse the various worlds without leaving a trace. In the past, even the 9 guards sent an army to wipe them out. Although they were no match for them, they could still easily retreat. I see. Jiang Tian nodded. If he obtained these world holes, he would at least have the means to protect himself even if he could not defeat the ruins emperor for the time being. At that moment, sharp sword hums and roars of ferocious beasts sounded. Groups of domineering and bloodthirsty experts came from the horizon. They surrounded the heavenly village. There were at least a few hundred people and almost all of them were at the Golden Core realm. They were very powerful. The leader was actually a dozen nascent soul stage cultivators. Their strength was not inferior to Long Xingnan and Ao Tian Swordmaster. They were not far from Ghost Wolf. Even though they were supreme cultivators, they weren't as ethereal and transcendent as other cultivators. Instead, they rode on top of savage beasts and fierce birds. Their scales were dense and their wings were huge. The roars of the beasts echoed for 10 miles while their murderous intent soared to the sky. This was a group of great bandits whose bodies were suffused with bloody energy. With a single glance, one could tell that their hands had once been dyed in blood. They had stepped over piles of corpses and killed countless people. They had gathered unimaginable killing intent, and there was bloody energy that transformed into the laws of slaughter that coiled around their bodies. Their imposing auras shook the heavens and earth. One after another, savage beasts broke through the void and arrived. The huge wings of the ferocious birds also stirred up the wind and clouds, causing thunder and lightning. The leader of the bandits was a young man who looked to be in his 30s. He was sitting on the head of a giant beast, but his cultivation was at the peak stage of the nascent soul stage, not far from the half-step to the soul formation stage. He had a wide mouth and fangs, and his beard was like a steel brush. He looked extremely ugly. His demonic golden vertical pupils were like those of a cold-blooded creature, like a poisonous snake. His eyes were cold and there seemed to be no human emotions in them. His eyes were arrogant and his teeth were dense. He was full of ferocity. The cold iron armor around his body was flashing and clanging. He was holding a pair of sharp scissors that looked like crisscrossing canine teeth. 9 blood-red flags floated in the air behind him, as if they were completely condensed by blood energy. After drinking all the blood energy soared into the sky. This is Yi Chun, who has the bloodline of the 9-tailed divine crocodile. He's the young master of the Yi family, one of the 9 bandits. This person is extremely bloody and cruel. He once killed a noble in the ruins of immortality, slaughtered 8 cities and robbed countless heavenly treasures. Long Xingnan was shocked. This was a notorious bandit. Since his ancestors, he had been robbing and killing people for their belongings. He had a long history. He didn't have any rules or scruples when doing things. He killed as he pleased. He was ferocious and wasn't afraid of death. Being able to retreat calmly from a half-step to the soul formation divine general was a headache. I've even suppressed the crocodile ancestor. What's there to be afraid of? It's just a 9-tailed crocodile. It's like a small lizard. Jiang Tian said. The other bandit had a pointy head, a black face and a pair of sneaky eyes. His slender body was streamlined and his face, neck and hands were covered with scales. The nails on his hands were unusually long and slightly curved, shining with cold light like peerless heavenly hooks. He obviously had the bloodline of a demon beast. Yellow earth energy surrounded him, forming laws. Obviously he was very good at earth cultivation arts. He could break mountains and break the earth with ease. Jiang Tian's divine sense swept over this person, and his expression involuntarily changed. Clearly this was the first time he had met this person, but he felt a sense of déjà vu. Even his bloodline and aura gave him a very familiar feeling. He's the young master of the Ying family, Ying Long. He's extremely despicable and shameless. He makes a living by digging tombs and robbing tombs. He likes to dig up other people's tombs the most. Everywhere he goes there are thousands of holes. Ghost Wolf didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He plundered more than 1,000 tombs. He even dug up the imperial mausoleum of the ruins emperor's lineage. He stole countless treasures and the corpse of a divine lord. He even defecated and peed in the tomb. He even alerted the ruins emperor. He had once checked the relevant files and even chased after Ying Long, but he didn't catch up with him. He knew Ying Long very well. I'm a fanatical researcher. I only like to study history and take it as my responsibility to straighten out the progress of mankind. I'm committed to becoming a great archaeologist who can reproduce the real history through the underground tombs. At this moment, Ying Long glanced at the villagers of Heavenly Village and said with a righteous face, I heard that perfected cultivator Zhao Ziming's tomb is here. I want to explore it and take out the burial items, turning them into treasures. Don't stop me. I excavate tombs and protect ancient relics. It's all for academic research. I want to clear the fog and restore the truth of history. I don't like to kill people. All of you quickly retreat. This fellow had a very shameless face. He made his despicable actions of digging tombs and robbing tombs sound extremely noble. Ying Long Senior Zhao died tragically in battle back then. He didn't leave behind any treasures. Village Chief Luo Shou stepped forward and cupped his fists. Sir, please be magnanimous and let Senior Zhao off this time. Don't let him have no peace after death. No, no, no. You don't understand. Yinglong said very seriously. I've emphasized time and time again that it's not for treasures, but for the sake of researching the truth of history. His death involved the Great War of the Era of Dao damage. The people of your world are still being deceived. Besides, it's not up to you to decide if there are any relics or relics. As a historian, I have to dig it up and take a look for myself. This is the empirical spirit of historical research. You are not to touch Senior Zhao's tomb at all. Get out of here. Luo Xin raised his hand and grabbed a 1,000-kilogram boulder, raised it high and threw it at Yinglong like a shot put. Clang. Yi Chun pointed in the air and with a finger the huge rock immediately exploded in the air, turning into fine powder. How dare you attack the great Ko family? You're courting death. Yi Chun's face was cold and ruthless. He stretched out his hand and raised a 1,000-foot mountain and smashed it at Heavenly Village. At this moment, everyone cried out in surprise and their faces turned pale from shock. The young and strong men of the Heavenly Village could naturally escape with their powerful physical techniques. However, the women and children as well as some elderly people would suffer. They might not be able to resist at all. Chapter 1539. Little Luo Fu clutched Jiang Tian's right hand tightly, his face pale from fright as he shut his eyes tightly. Luo Xin shouted, Yi Chun, my rule is that tomb robbers don't kill people. Why are you doing this? But it was too late for him to stop him. You're courting death by killing the innocent. Under extreme danger, Jiang Tian's face sank, and he held little Luo Fu in his arms as he took a step forward to meet the attack. With a flick of his sleeve, surging seventh metal true essence pushed out like a raging wave, instantly pushing the enormous mountain far away and shattering it. Rumble. Countless boulders fell on the ground like rain, causing the earth to shake and trees to snap. It was as if a great earthquake had erupted. An expert. I can't believe there's a golden core cultivator in the small heavenly village. At this moment Yi Chun, Yinglong and the other great Ko and great bandits were all shocked and incredulous. The heavenly village was just a group of ordinary people with strong bodies. They were far weaker than the cultivators of the great bandits. It was as if a Harvard student had appeared in a poor village where everyone was illiterate. It was really surprising. Yinglong, you're such a busybody. Why do you have so many rules? Yi Chun's demonic vertical pupils revealed a mocking expression as he laughed sinisterly. He's a golden core perfected cultivator after all. Do you think he'll let you take away his ancestors' treasure? He has to be killed. Ah, brother, just step back. I'm really doing research in archaeology. I won't hurt Senior Zhao's body. Yinglong tried to persuade Jiang Tian. He didn't want to see Jiang Tian die. He was a thief and didn't kill people. Beating people was his limit. If he hadn't met Yi Chun and the other party hadn't insisted on robbing him, he would have dug it out secretly when no one was around. That would have been perfect. Do you think you're so great just because there's a golden core cultivator in the heavenly village? In the end, you're just a mortal ant who can't cultivate. You don't know how high the sky is. A nascent soul realm bandit was full of disdain. He took out a golden pestle and threw it at Jiang Tian. They were all bandits who had traversed the various worlds. They killed people like scything flax and made a name for themselves by stepping on piles of bones. They had even dared to provoke the ruins Emperor's Palace and the 9 guards. They had seen all sorts of situations and had killed countless golden core cultivators. Why would they think anything of them? That nascent soul bandit was also extremely ruthless. It was normal for him to kill people and steal their treasures. His weapons, dharma treasures and even the beast he was riding were all stolen. Countless golden core perfected lords had died in his hands. This precious pestle was also a quasi-true artifact. It contained metal laws and as it smashed down, golden light pervaded the air like a river of light. It poured down in torrents and the rumbling of laws was enough to turn everything within 10 li into fine powder. Tila. Jiang Tian's face was as cold as iron. This time he truly made a move. He pointed at the air. Rumble. A beam of golden light was shot out like a cannonball, instantly breaking the golden curtain and tearing apart the laws. It penetrated the nascent soul realm bandit's body and even destroyed his nascent soul. That was a shocking scene. A rain of blood was falling from the sky. Broken bones and pieces of internal organs were flying everywhere, and the airwaves caused by the explosion of the nascent soul were surging like tides. Jiang Tian had killed a nascent soul realm cultivator with a finger. Everyone was completely shocked. He killed a mid-stage nascent soul realm cultivator with a finger. Who is he? Be careful. This kid hid his power. He killed a nascent soul realm cultivator with a finger. He's obviously a peak stage or even a peak stage heavenly lord. Many bandits looked at Jiang Tian in shock as if they were looking at a devil. They used to be invincible on a second-class planet like Hailan and even dared to go to the ruins of deity. When they went to a desolate planet like Penglai, they were like city people playing in the countryside. They didn't take it seriously at all. After all, the most powerful person there, Swordmaster Outyen, was only an early-stage nascent soul heavenly lord, and there was only one of him in this world. What did they have to be afraid of? But they had never thought that an overlord would suddenly appear and kill a nascent soul heavenly lord when they were facing a group of ordinary people in Heavenly Village. Boom! The giant beasts galloped and the vicious birds flapped their wings. Their team hurriedly changed from attacking to defending and formed a battle formation. Everyone looked at Jiang Tian vigilantly. Kid, who are you? Did you come from the heavenly world? In fact, even Yi Chun was shocked. His face was unprecedentedly serious and cold light flashed in his eyes as he scanned Jiang Tian. Even though he was a peak-stage nascent soul realm cultivator, he knew he couldn't kill a nascent soul realm bandit with a finger. You don't deserve to know my name. Jiang Tian sneered and snorted with disdain in his eyes. You're used to killing innocent people and robbing people, right? How dare you bully me? I'll give you two choices. You can kneel and surrender or I'll kill you. Seeing how powerful Jiang Tian was, Ying Long quickly stopped Yi Chun and said with his immortal will, "Forget it. Forget it, brother Yi, let's retreat. I'll come back at night to investigate secretly. I won't hurt or kill anyone. Even the scene is perfect. That's what an archaeologist should do. Get out of my way." Yi Chun waved his hand and pushed Ying Long away. His face was as cold as iron and his eyes were cold and ruthless. Today I'll kill this person. I'll skin him alive and extract his divine soul to refine in the demonic fire seed for 1,000 years to avenge my brother. Yi Chun roared, so hateful that his demonic vertical pupils turned completely red. How could the right-hand man of the nascent soul realm bandit who had lost his mind and died spare Jiang Tian? He brazenly attacked, raising the crocodile scissors and cutting. An enormous crocodile that was over 300 meters long appeared in the sky, covering the sky and covering the sun like a small mountain. It was completely formed from true essence controlled by the laws, and its 9 tails swayed in unison, shaking heaven and earth. It opened its bloody mouth and bit towards Jiang Tian. This was not his Dharma form, but the weapon spirit of the quasi-genuine weapon. It was formed by the Dharma power and the Dharma power. Even if it was broken, it would not hurt him. "Uncle Jiang, I'm scared." The little girl was frightened and trembled slightly. After all, she was high in the sky at this time, and the crocodile that the bandits had shot out was 10 times more terrifying than the crocodiles she had seen before. "Don't be afraid. These are just things that Uncle can blow up with one punch. Look, Uncle will set off fireworks for you to see." Jiang Tian held the little girl in his hand and slowly raised his jade-white fist with his left hand and punched out. Gongjin Divine Fist. This punch had no smoke or fire aura, no power to speak of. It was like an old man doing morning exercises in the park. But suddenly there was a terrible whistling sound in the sky. The whistling sound was getting louder and louder as if a hurricane had passed through. A fist made of Gongjin true essence rushed out of the void out of thin air. It was getting bigger and bigger, more and more solid. In a flash, the mountain-like fist instantly smashed on the 9-tailed giant crocodile. Roar. The huge crocodile did not even hold on for a second. It let out a sad roar and burst open unwillingly. A huge mushroom cloud rose in the sky, and sparks splashed everywhere. It was like fireworks blooming in the daytime. The billowing airwaves pushed in all directions, shaking the mountains and breaking countless trees. Wow! Uncle Zhang's fireworks are so beautiful. And it's a crocodile. The little girl Luo Fu's face was full of surprise. She pointed with her little finger and a pair of big watery eyes were wide open. She blinked and couldn't get enough of it. These fireworks were much bigger than the fireworks set off by her great-grandfather during the holidays. It was too imposing and spectacular.